Today, our 7 sport cameras bring us to Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway at Annangrove for the opening round of the Better Breaks Group A Touring Car Series. Amaroo is one of Australia's most picturesque motor racing layouts and a real racer's strip with its uphill section and reverse camber corners. The big names are out in force today as Jim Richards, Neville Crichton and Tony Longhurst lead the BMW charge against Robbie Francevic in the Turbo Volvo and Steve Masterton in the new Commodore. The Nissan Turbo Challenge is also a highlight of the meeting, with many of Australia's leading drivers stepping into showroom models to compete for the big money on offer. The old cry of non-stop action is tailor-made for the ARDC's Amaroo Park, as you'll discover during our second visit of the season to this circuit today.
Hello, welcome to Amaroo Park on a great day, and touring car muscle comes to Amaroo for the first time in '85 with the first round of the Better Breaks AMSCAR Series. Steve Masterton debuts his new Commodore. He'll be carrying race cam for us. We've also got round 4 of the Australian Touring Car Championship and the first round of the new Nissan Turbo Super Challenge, with all the top drivers mixing it in the one make for big prize money. Another round of the Laser Series 2 and lots more. Formula Vs and all the tin tops, the sports sedans. Really fantastic racing. Cars about to come out. For the first one, here's Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Gary Wilkinson. And indeed, the cars are coming out onto the circuit now. Colin Bond just coming out beneath the control tower. Jim Richards ready to come onto the circuit. And Jim Richards, as expected, has pole position here today for the opening round of the Better Breaks Group A Series, the first time that we've seen the Group A cars in competition at Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway. He won pole position yesterday with a 55.20 timing. Colin Bond in the Alpha with a 55.51, and Robbie Francevic of New Zealand, who is -1 gear here today, 4th gear, and the Volvo at 55.60. So not too much over the first 3, and of course joining them for the second row of the grid, Steve Masterton, having his first outing in the Masterton Homes Commodore with a 55.90. Well, the cars are out on the circuit. It might be timely now to have a look at the grid and see how they'll line up for the Better Breaks AMSCAR Series here today at Amaroo Park. Jim Richards in car number 62 holds pole position in the BMW. From position number 2, car number 26, Colin Bond in the Network Alpha. From position number 3 in car number 21, Robbie Francevic. From position 4, car 2, Steve Masterton. From 5, 23, Tony Longhurst in the BMW 323. From 6, car number 12, Gary Wilmington of Sydney in the Jaguar XJS. From 7, 33, Barry Seaton in the Mustang. From 8, car number 22, Glenn Malloy in a BMW. From 9 is car 19, Ken Matthews in a Commodore. From 10, 69, Phil McDonald in an Alfa Romeo GTV. From 11, 13, Bob Holden in the Toyota Sprinter. And from 12, car number 53 is Chris Heyer in the Audi.
I don't think I'd like to be Colin Bond lined up where he is, Mike, because on the second row immediately behind him, he's going to have a hard charger like Steve Masterton, and immediately behind Masterton on the third row of the grid is Gary Wilmington and that enormous XJS Jaguar. Bondi is going to have to be pretty quick off the mark to steer clear of that little lot.
He certainly will, Gary. The man they'll all have to beat, obviously, is car number 62, well, the driver certainly, Jim Richards, in the JPS BMW, the man who has dominated the Australian Touring Championship so far. And we are 30 seconds away from the start. The Better Breaks Series, as last year, over 3 heats during the day. A sprint distance one, which has already been won by Jim Richards, now through to the 10-lapper and a 20-lapper to follow later in the afternoon. The points scored on the same basis as the Australian Touring Car Championship. 10 seconds away from the start. Heat 2, round 1. Racing, and Bond gets away smartly. This time he pulls the next gear, and Masterton goes between he and the JPS BMW, and Masterton, like a bullet, is off and running up the hill, heading up to the top of Bitcher Pave, and that has put Richards back into 3rd. Ranging up to them is Gary Wilmington in the XJS, and he comes up to 3rd, drops to 4th, 5th, and the man who didn't make a good start was the silver Volvo, Robbie Francevic. But it's Steve Masterton having his first outing today in the Group A Commodore, and he will lead them down to Mazda for the first time.
Well, people said, how good will this Commodore be for Masterton? There's the answer. They did have some problems in qualifying, a little fuel surge problem. They were losing a bit of oil earlier in the day, but gee, at the moment, with 9.5 laps remaining here, Masterton is doing it well and doing it where he likes to. Neil Crompton, he's really got this car running well at its first outing.
He certainly has, Gary. They've done a lot of work on the car, only finished it last week, and Pat Purcell saying yesterday that so far everything has come together perfectly. as he comes around to end lap number 1 and 9 to go, and Jim Richards through the second now with Colin Bond in third. And right behind him, Tony Longhurst in the 323 BMW.
Well, the 323 BMW having its first outing here too at Amaroo Park, and by gee, it's going very quick for Longhurst.
I tell you what, it's been a long time since Jim Richards has seen anyone disappear away from him. But I think we may have picked the right car, because today Race Cam is sitting in the Commodore, and that Commodore is leading the field. Steve Masterton at the wheel as he comes down to Mazda. Little right-hand kick coming down the hill now to Honda, the left-hander. You can hear the engine. You can see exactly the lines that Masterton uses as he runs down to the lake, with about 20 metres back behind him, Jim Richards in the BMW.
And Richards is closing, so this could get to be quite exciting, this tussle up front very shortly. How close to the wall is Masterton? Through Wonderlick and onto the main straight again, past the start-finish line with 2 laps gone. And up the hill. There goes Richards in pursuit. Bond, Longhurst in the other BMW. And look at the brakes back then to Frencevic in the Volvo and Wilmington in the Jag. Wilmington got a great start and in fact got his nose up to about 2nd place going over the top of the hill the first time, and seemed to lose something there, and half the field streamed through on the inside. He's been shuffled back to 6th spot.
Here's Steve Masterton coming down towards Mazda. Little right-hand kick and then the run down to Honda. It's downhill to the left-hander at Honda. We're still following the dice up front. Masterton's car a little loose there, a little tail happy coming out of Honda. Now, if Richards is going to make his move, it will be down towards the lake corner, and he is really starting to close now on Steve Masterton as they come down to the right-hander.
Well, the more sideways Masterton gets, the more ground Richards is going to make up.
Still a great debut off the line for Masterton. There's the JPS 62 car. Jimmy Richards of Victoria at the wheel. The gap back to Colin Bond, then back behind him, Tony Longhurst. We'll wait and see whether or not Jim Richards can get by Steve Masterton, because nobody probably knows Amaroo better than young Steve.
A 55.9 for Masterton on the last lap, and in the first heat earlier on today, Jim Richards recorded a fastest lap of 55.2. So in theory, at least, he has the legs as he now makes a move, coming out of the loop. The shot from inside the car with 7 Sports exclusive race cam.
Didn't have the line there, Richards, but he might have it this time. Let's see what happens as they come out of Honda.
I think you might look now for Richards if he makes the move. Down the inside, perhaps.
Here he
He's
comes.
got a little more poke. And see if he can take the lead away. They are close, let me tell you, as they come out of this corner. Masterton against the wall. There's the gap. First over second. Bond still sitting back there comfortably in 3rd place as they come across the strike in this 10-lapper for the Better Brakes Group A Series at Amaroo. Masterton leads them in the Masterton Homes. Number 2 Commodore. Richards 2nd in the 62 and Bond 3rd in the 26 Alpha.
Interesting, Masterton had more toe out of that lake corner than Rich. Here goes Richards again on the outside this time. Now he'll cut back, try and get the inside line down through the loop. He's got the line. Has he got the power? Masterton puts a foot down again. Oh, this is great stuff. There he goes.
So Richards in the JPS BMW from position 4 back to 3rd, then to 2nd, and he's now taken the lead away from Steve Masterton in the Black Beauty.
Look at Bond too, right on Masterton's hammer. So Steve's going to have to watch himself here.
Well, there's the gap. We're in the 5th lap of this 10-lap race as they come out of the lake corner. Masterton with Bond tapping his intentions there.
I tell you what, Tony Longhurst is getting a little bit closer as well. As Bond now makes a move on Masterton. It's going to be close, but I think this will be a good one for Colin Bond as he starts to close that gap across the top. Can he get across in front? Yes, he does.
By gee, this little Alpha seems to have found a yard and a half.
Oh, back under him. That's it. You only get one chance in this world. And Masterton has found it. Bond got brake lock up. Longhurst now has taken him. So that puts Bond from 2nd to 4th. Now
Don't blink.
Don't blink. So Masterton stays in 2nd. Longhurst makes the charge up into 3rd. And Bond is 4th. Francevic is 5th. A little off the pace here. Coming down to the lake corner, and Richards starting to pull away now from Masterton. We'll see whether or not Bond can get it all together as he comes back to put the pressure on Longhurst.
Jim Richards back in his customary position, the leader of the Australian Touring Car Championship after 4 rounds. There's Longhurst in the new 323 and Colin Bond in car number 26. Doesn't appear to be any problem with the car. I think he just went in pretty deep across the top. As we look here at the beautifully prepared Pat Purcell built Steve Masterton Commodore. A Peter Brock body, all of the fabrication and the engine work done here in Sydney. And they're claiming around about 314 brake horsepower for this car, which, if that's true, it's possibly the highest horsepower Group A Commodore in Australia at the moment, and they reckon there's more to come.
We know it can get off the line.
But at the moment, he's still running second to Jim Richards. Richards down through Honda. A good lead now over Masterton. Longhurst in third place, trying to get close enough to put the pressure on Masterton. I don't know whether he'll have time before the laps run out in this race, with 3 remaining.
Coming along the short straight to Wonderlick Corner. There's the gap from first to second. Longhurst being the next one through.
And Bond is slipping back. In fact, the Volvo of Francevic is closing rapidly on him. Yeah, the car, apart from a little brake lock-up we saw earlier, seems to be blowing a little smoke, the Alpha. He was working it so hard he might have broken it.
They've had some gearbox problems this weekend. They changed the gearbox last night, and earlier on, Colin had trouble selecting first to second. I was wondering whether or not they've got a recurrence of the same sort of problem as we look here at Longhurst. The 2.3-litre 6-cylinder BMW 323, and he's doing a mighty job in behind the 5-litre Commodore. Locks up the left-hand front as we look here at Colin Bond.
There's Bond, and as you can see, right behind Bond is New Zealander Robbie Francevic. Some telltale smoke coming from the rear of the Alpha. And we'll see if Francevic can put the wood on the Alpha coming out of this corner around the lake. Bond gets out against the wall, and the Volvo races up to him on the inside, but that's no place to pass. We'll see if it can out-drag the Alpha, heading up the hill this time. But Bond is really attacking this race. Here is Robbie Francevic, zeroing in on Colin Bond in 26, takes the inside. Bond gave him just a little bit of racing room.
Oh, Bondy's out in the marbles there, and that's dangerous.
So he has a problem with car number 26.
It's a shame because he was charging right up to Masterton and Richards at the head of the race, only 2 laps back. But definitely seems to have broken something. Oh, look at this. Longhurst right on Masterton's tail now. Running second and third on the track. Jim Richards continues to lead the race. Masterton working hard. The BMW really makes up a lot of ground around the back of the circuit.
Coming up with 1 lap remaining. And Jim Richards is already across the strike. Here's Steve Masterton. We take race cam as we head up Bitchapave Hill for the final time.
That's Richards disappearing over the top. Masterton in pursuit, trying to hold out Longhurst, and he's having to work hard at it. This is where Longhurst's good, down through here and all the way down to the lake corner.
It's a little bit taily on that occasion and lost just half a car length. They're expecting to get about a 2.5-litre engine into this car later on in the season, and if that's the case, this is going to be a real force to be reckoned with, this small BMW. 960-odd kilograms, producing at present about 200 brake horsepower as we look at Jim Richards in car 62, set here for victory at round 1 of the Better Brake Series for 85. Second and third as yet not decided.
Coming out of the lake corner up towards Camalco. And Jim Richards in car number 62 comes out of the final corner for heat number 2 of round 1. JPS, the man with the checkered flag with a slight problem, but he gets them across the line. Second spot will go to Steve Masterton, and Tony Longhurst will gather up third place, looking for the rest of the field to come through, including Robbie Francevic. Here's a recap of the placings. Richards, the winner. Second place going to Steve Masterton in the Commodore, and third place to Tony Longhurst. A great debut in the BMW. We'll take a break and return live with the action from Amaroo Park. For sheer versatility, there are a few drivers here at Amaroo Park today to match the feats of this man, Stephen Gall, who is better known for his gutsy performances in the field of motocross. The 27-year-old Gall is 4 times Mr. Motocross Series winner. He was runner-up in the 2 big Sydney Supercross spectaculars at Liverpool and won the World Masters Supercross at London's Chelsea Stadium. In recent months, he's been a standout rookie in the rough and tumble world of sprint car racing. Gall has triumphed on 2 wheels in motocross and for Yamaha in the Castrol 6-hour production classic. He's been a checkered flag collector on the ovals in both speed cars and sprint cars, and today he joins the field for the Group E production car series in a BMW.
It's versatility, really. I love motorsport, and I really like to stretch out and try some different aspects of the sport. And Group E racing this year is a new thing for me. I've had an offer from Phil Christensen from the Checkered Flag magazine, and he offered me a drive in the Perrier BMW, and I couldn't say no. With all these things happening, I just have to have a go at it and sort of get some more experience in another field of racing. So I really just wanted to get in there and do my best.
Not wishing to offend you, but at 27 years of age, is that getting long in the tooth for motocross?
Yes, it is. Younger guys at 17, 18, 19 years of age are really pushing very hard these days and making it very, very awkward to stay on top or staying near the top. So I feel that I need to progress to maybe car racing where it's a little bit easier to sit in the car seat instead of bouncing around on a motocross bike, and stretch my sort of talents into other areas, I hope.
Stephen, your interest in car racing and perhaps the fact that you signalled it last year, could that have cost you in your motocross career with sponsorship?
Well, maybe, Mike. I've had some sponsorship deals this year pulled out from under me, maybe because I've taken on some car racing. I don't know whether my sponsors within the bike field thought that I was spending the money on cars, but that's definitely not the case. And it might have affected me a little bit, but I really channel whatever sponsorship money I get into that respective field. So I'm just trying to do my best within each field, and hopefully it'll turn out well in the future.
Well, a busy man today is certainly going to be Stephen Gall in the Stay and Stables Group E Production Car Series. Back now to Gary Wilkinson.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, looking forward to seeing Stephen in action. Mr. Versatility is the right word for him, and I think you'll find that out if you follow his progress around here at Amaroo Park this afternoon. At the moment, we're just waiting to follow the progress of cars in round 2 of the Formula 2 Championship, or round 4 rather, of the Formula 2 Championship of Australia for 1982. The cars about to come out onto the track. Just a slight delay here as officials, as part of their attraction to people at the course, are distributing Easter eggs. Who better to distribute them than the Easter Bunny? Renee Edwards is her name. There's a couple of motor racing drivers in the back of the truck with her, but not so as you'd notice. Receiving a very big hand. Righto, that's enough of that. Let's get back to the car racing. Who's interested?
You won't deal with that.
No, great innovation and something that's become a tradition here at Amaroo Park each year to distribute Easter eggs at the Easter weekend meeting. And Alan Grice and Dick Johnson helping Renee and do the honours with the eggs.
Well, coming up, of course, as Gary has mentioned, the Dunlop Formula 2 Championship. 26 laps this afternoon. We've seen some good Formula 2 racing on our motorsports telecast, of course, from Sandown, and they're always great to watch here at Amaroo Park.
Yes, this year's Australian Formula 2 Championship being quite hotly contested by these two men here. Car number 1, Peter Glover, the Black Cheetah, driver from Melbourne, and behind him you can see a little of the green car being driven by Peter McCrow.
I was going to say, you better explain that's a make-up car, the Black Cheetah.
The two of them separated by just 1.5 points after the first 3 rounds, which started at Winton. Progressed from there to Sandown, up to Lakeside a couple of weekends ago in Queensland, and here today for round 4. The series will continue right throughout Australia for the next few months. These cars are beautifully prepared, slightly slower than the Mondial cars, the Formula 1 cars that we saw last weekend. This car here, car number 8, being driven by Bob Power from Queensland. G'day, Bob. It's a rolled RT3. It's been in the hands of around about 3 or 4 drivers. In fact, this car won the Australian Formula 2 Championship about 3 years ago in the hands of the hard young Melbourne charger Lucio Cesario.
Well, I think that sums it up too. The 2 cars in front of him are a lot newer and a lot more potent, and that's what they've demonstrated in the series to date. Both Glover and Macro have been very dominant. Now, they're the 2 that are on the track. The other cars yet to come out. Here they come. Right, so let's, as the cars come out for just this one warm-up, check the way they're going to line up on the grid for the 4th round of the championship, and on pole, as we've already foreshadowed, Peter Glover in car number 1, and alongside him with an identical qualifying time, Peter Macro also driving a cheetah. Second row, car 8, Bob Power, and 35, Neil Israel. On the next row, car 3, Steve Swain driving a Hartman, and in car 5, Derek Pringle, a cheetah. 83 is Peter Lana driving a Wren. Alongside him in 33 is Craig Sparks driving a Richards. Then in car 7, Vincent McLaughlin driving a cheetah, as is car number 2, Graham Blee. Car 6 is Tom Brickley in a Barana, and car number 16, Brad Wright driving a Liston. They are the top 12 qualifiers. Mark Potter, Paul Thomas, Wayne Ford, and Peter Doolman complete the field for round 4 of the championship. 26 laps is a lot of motor racing around Amaroo Park.
It's going to be a long, hard drive. The traffic problem is something that the leading competitors, certainly Macro and Glover, are just a little bit worried about. The tight, twisty turns here at Amaroo are going to see them mix up into the back of the field pretty early on in this event. And so not only is vehicle preparation going to be of utmost importance, as it always is, but threading your way through this traffic is something that they're going to have to watch very, very carefully. Car number 2 is Graham Blee from Victoria, and one of the older cheaters. Not utilising in those days the full effect of the ground effects that these cars here have got. Side pods on the cars, as we've explained before in our motor racing coverage, are working like an inverted aeroplane aerofoil, literally pulling the car to the road. 4-cylinder single camshaft engines producing around about 185 brake horsepower, and they're all on the same type of tyre, so nobody can come out and outbuck the other competitor, if you like. There's nobody out there with super sticky rubber and special imports from England or Japan.
Handling is the big plus for these cars. 32nd board is up, and there's the front row, Glover and Macro. It'll be a real duel between this pair. Bob Power and Neil Israel driving a Ralt and an RBN respectively.
Not far away from the start now. Flag is up. And they're off to a brilliant start. This time I think it's Macro and Glover on the inside. Just look at the traffic. One missing a gear there. They've all managed to get by. Streaking up Bay Hill for the first time as they drop over, going down into Dunlop Loop. It's Glover who's gone through to take over the lead. No, he hasn't. Macro trying to find the inside edge past the tyres. May have done so. One's gone out sideways.
Bob Power, who came off the second row of the grid, got lost in the early shuffle up the hill and then has lost it through the loop and finds himself well back at the rear of the field. Why, gee, that was a very brave manoeuvre on the part of Peter Macro. There wasn't much room for him to get through going down into the loop, but he did it and has really annoyed Glover, who's looking for a way through, inside, outside, by the lake corner, out very wide. Goodness
he really
me.
is desperate to want to win this one in one lap. He's got 26 he can do it in. Beneath our camera position on the start finishing straight as they head up Bay Hill again.
How twitchy some of those cars are under Power coming out of that corner.
Heading up to the top of the hill, going through, and that dive still continues.
That's Neil Israel, car 35, came off the second row of the grid with Bob Power, whom we saw on the previous lap in trouble, but here back at the front of the race is Peter Macro and Peter Glover. Identical qualifying times, and as you can see, there is not, a little bit of brake lock up there from Macro. You're kidding, he doesn't know he's got Glover on his tail. Under brakes into the corner. Glover again tries the outside this time. Oh, he's got him on the outside. Power down from Macro, draws back to the lead. That's like a personal war out there between this pair.
They are really into it as they go across the line again with Macro leading. Glover coming up again on the inside as they range up to the top, and Glover seems interested in wanting to experiment with some very strange lines around here at Amaroo.
This kind of cutthroat play between Glover and Macro is playing into the hands of Derek Pringle in car 5 as we see Glover go through and resume the lead again. But look at Pringle. I mean, he loves it. If these two are going to cutthroat each other all day, as long as he can stay on the pace, he's in a handy position. And those three have opened up a pretty fair break now. once more now. Glover, as we saw, so desperate to get past, has begun to open up a break over Macro, then Pringle. Fourth place, held down by car 33. That's Craig Sparks from South Australia.
Israel gets through in the Arbian, which is a copy of the March 793, the car that was run a few years ago by Russell Norden. He's going to be a man to watch in this race because there's plenty of time for him to thread his way through. Bob Power, car number 8, in trouble. Rear end of the car looking a bit skew-if, and he retires to the pit area.
Yes, that big spin earlier, I don't think did the car any good.
Here they come.
You mentioned Russell Norden, Neil. I think that's how the car got its name. It's his initials, isn't it? RBN.
Something strange like that. There's an unusual combination there, but that car was very competitive quite a few years ago, and unfortunately now has been superseded by this vehicle here.
Well, I think
Cheetah Mark 8.
you say unfortunately. I think that a couple of guys have been smart enough to get new machinery.
Well, that's about it. But these are a car built in Australia, which is becoming less usual these days in motor racing here. It's built in Melbourne by Brian Sheed, and the popular engine, certainly in the lead two cars, is the Judd Volkswagen Golf engine, which Peter Glover is the importer in Melbourne. The cars, or the engines at least, hail from England.
Man holding down third place still in car 33 is Craig Sparks. Driving a different car again, a Richards, and I think that also is built by a former Formula 2 champion.
That's correct. Ian Richards from South Australia did a beautiful job building that car, and that was the lead car for a season or two in Australia before these came out. Peter Glover just took delivery of his Mark 8 at the start of this season, driving the older car last year, the championship victory in '84.
5 laps completed and only 21 to go in the Dunlop Formula 2 race here this afternoon at Amaroo. Peter Glover dictating the pace and starting to increase that lead now over Peter Macro as they go down to the lake corner again.
He's done a good job, Glover, because this car was almost mint fresh when he put it on the track at Winton for the opening round of the championship. In fact, they hadn't even had time to put any sign writing on the car other than the number 1. And number 1 it is in pride of place at the moment as they come around. 5.5 laps gone in round 4 of the Australian Formula 2 Championship. The race will still be in progress when we return to Amaroo Park. Race leader in the 4th round of the Formula 2 Championship, Peter Glover, with a very substantial margin even at this early stage now over Peter Macro.
3.4 seconds from first to second.
That's a long way in these cars.
You notice on the front of Peter Glover's car there, the little kick-ups to the side of the front aerofoils just in front of the front wheels. Macro doesn't have that advantage. Glover was saying yesterday that it costs him around about 50 to 75 RPM in a straight line, but you spend so much time turning here at Amaroo, it's more important to have that downforce on the front. That's certainly helping his cause at the moment.
Here's our second place driver going through Peter Macro as Glover heads down to the lake corner, right-hander. You'll be able to see the gap there back to second place. Peter Macro probably stretched out to be 150 metres by now as they head through Wonderlick Corner and back onto the start-finishing straight. Lap 12 of 26 in the Dunlop Formula 2 Championship. The action continuing at Amaroo Park. We're following Peter Macro over the top and down into Dunlop Loop. 44 years of age, comes from Melbourne. Been racing for 23 years, driving car 25 at Cheetah. First raced at Winton in Victoria and Austin Cooper, mind you, back in 1961. He's competed at Bathurst, drove there in 1968. He also competed in the 1983 Australian Grand Prix.
61 must have been the year the circuit opened, was it? Or the year after the circuit opened at Winton? It was early 60s.
So he's certainly done a lot of racing. 1968, he was fourth at Bathurst in a Monaro for the Holden dealer team. 1980, the winner of the Victorian Formula 2 Championship, again at Winton.
He gets around a bit. He was also a competitor in the 81 Indonesian Grand Prix in Jakarta.
He loves his Formula 2 racing, as Peter Macro. and 44 years of age. That would put him into the super vet class.
Peter Macrow shared the front row of the grid at Lakeside with Peter Glover as well, and the two of them on that occasion both sharing identical times. The leader, Peter Glover, with a new sponsor this weekend. They were very impressed with his performance at Sandown.
Oh, gee, that lead is really being stretched now by Glover. It's out to nearly 6 seconds, 5.9 seconds. And it's quite a fair way back to the other contenders. In fact, I think that's the wrong word to use. There aren't too many contenders in the race. Number 5 is Derek Pingle from Queensland, also driving a cheetah. So the cheetahs are running 1, 2, 3. And he was, oh, hello, it sounds a bit rough already going through there, Derek. He was in close touch with Macrow and Glover through the first 3 or 4 laps. But maybe that little rough sounding that we heard going through the loop there has accounted for the reason that he's dropped back just a little. Comes from Gatton in Queensland, so he should be a well-bred racing man. Born in Toowoomba. Drives a Porsche Carrera when he's not driving Formula 2. So he knows what it's like to have power under his foot.
Well, obviously a large contingent of our Queensland viewers will be following the progress of Derek here this afternoon. With our Amaroo telecasts, of course, being seen through BTQ, Channel 7 in Brisbane.
Pingle was about 2 seconds off the pace in qualifying, and in the preliminary this morning in the Formula 2 he was also about 2 seconds off the quickest pace, so he hasn't been able to match the ability of Macrow and Glover so far. But the car very nicely turned out. They've got a very professional little operation. Had a look at it in the pits yesterday, and I guess it's a case of coming to terms with the new car. A lot of them having a little bit of trouble sorting out the different type of suspension setup that you have to deal with in the ground effects car. There's Israel in car number 35 in 4th position at the moment. This is the car we talked about before, the copy of the March 793, which was the dominant Formula 2 car in Europe about 3 seasons ago. The car has been for sale. I haven't checked whether or not it has been sold. In fact, but I've heard that Israel has got a new car coming for the latter part of the Formula 2 Championship this year.
And another one of the open wheelers, sponsored by Pi. Obviously, Pi do support the open wheeler racing through both Pi and Ignis. So I think quite a few of the open wheeler boys have got Paul Cross to thank for support. One thing about the Formula 2 is it gives us an opportunity to be able to go through the field and deal with the drivers individually.
Neil Israel started as a flag marshal at the age of 14, so he was involved in motor racing long before he ever got behind the wheel of a car. And if you think motor racing is an expensive hobby, Neil also collects Chinese art. Do you know that? I mean, that's a very expensive hobby.
It certainly is. Might have something in common with Peter Glover's sponsor. Once again, heading down to the lake area, the race powers on with Peter Glover in no danger of being beaten for a win here, I would think, unless mechanical problems crop up. And certainly our second-placed driver, Peter Macrow, in there as well. OK, how they're running on the road. Let's take a look as we recap the race and how it's running at this stage. The lead being held by Peter Glover in car number 1. Second, Peter Macrow, and in 3rd place is Derek Pingle. We'll take a break and return live to Amaroo Park.
Back at Amaroo Park, the laps are running out rapidly in the 4th round. Oh, gee, Derek, don't do things like that. Derek Pingle holding down 3rd place was, and Neil Israel gave him the slip when he made that little mistake. And Israel now takes over 3rd. It's still Peter Glover leading, Peter Macrow in 2nd place, and Neil Israel, who was closing rapidly on Pingle, and the pressure told, obviously, because Pingle got out of shape there and has let Israel through for 3rd spot. Bad mistake. with only 3 laps remaining, I don't think Pingle's going to be able to recover that ground either.
No, Israel was in fact closing the gap in the last 4 or 5 laps anyway, and I guess the pressure has told. And Pingle making that mistake and just cooking tyres. And Israel now with a relatively clear track in front of him. It should give him an opportunity to try and close that gap between himself and Peter McCrow. Working very hard at the wheel. Very, very hard as the car drifts out towards the fence. This is also round 2 of the local Dunlop Formula 2 series, which in fact was being led by Sydney-sider Keith McClelland. He was also running one of the Cheetah Mark 8s and led the series with 18 points. Terry Ryan in second with 12. Tom Brickley in third with 8. Brad Wright and Peter Dullman, the next 2 drivers. But Keith McClelland has sold his car, so unfortunately not running this weekend. But Keith was one of the fellows who was quite capable of mixing it up with the 2 leaders. And we saw him at Sandown in the second round of the Formula 2 Championship, giving it a great run. So there's in fact 2 different point score systems being used in this race. The cars in the Australian Championship are using the international scoring system, similar to the way the touring cars are being scored here today for the Better Break Series, awarding 30 points for first and right down the line to about 17th position, whereas in the Dunlop Series, awarding points from 9 right through to second.
So whilst Neil Israel disappears over the top of the hill, here he is again. The race leader, Peter Glover, is down at the lake corner. There he is. It's the man, number 1. Peter Glover coming through with 2 laps remaining and untroubled, because his lead over Peter Macro is now something of the order of 300 metres.
Quite a number of rounds still to go in the championship, so all those interested in the Formula 2s be able to get along and see some great action. Peter Glover has been supplying it, been turning on the fireworks, of course, with Peter McCrow since the series started.
Yes, we'll be picking up the action at Calder in 2 weeks' time on the 28th of April, when 7 Sport brings you our exclusive coverage of the Australian Touring Car Championship from Keilor International Raceway.
Coming around to the lake corner, and it won't be long before Peter Glover catches a glimpse of the sign. He'll be, I would think, quite happy to see. And that is the last lap board. So he's headed up the hill. Peter McCrow still running in second. Neil Israel in third. And Derek Pingle in 4th place. That's the order as we enter the final lap of the Dunlop Formula 2 Championship race here today at Amaroo Park. This man, after a couple of laps where he tried a few lines around the course that could have brought him unstuck, to be able to put it all together, coming down towards Honda Corner for the final time.
This will help Peter Glover's cause no end. The buffer between first and second is 3 points, so when they go to the next round of the championship, the situation won't be quite as tight as it's been. Remember, there's just 1.5 points separating first from second at present. But Peter Glover now coming out of the right-hander and lining up for a run towards the checkered flag, and will be victorious in round 4 of the 1985 Australian Formula 2 Championship after 26 laps around Amaroo Park. And you can see the enormous gap back to Peter McCrow. Car number 25, a similar car, but unable to match the pace.
Well, I think the flagman's still there looking for who ran 3rd and 4th, and they're still a long way back, but no doubt about who's won it and who has finished second. Here's 3rd and 4th coming in. Peter Glover waving to the crowd, and a big crowd has turned out here at Amaroo Park. Let's recap the placings in the Formula 2 Championship race. The win going, of course, to Peter Glover. 2nd place to Peter McCrow, and 3rd place going to Neil Israel. 26 laps of competition in the Dunlop Series. We'll take a break and then return for some of the touring car action from Amaroo Park.
Welcome back to Amaroo Park after the exciting 26 laps of the course for round 4 of the 1985 Australian Formula 2 Championship. It's my very great pleasure indeed to congratulate Peter Glover. An excellent performance and continuing in your winning form in this year's series. And I'd like you to accept this trophy for your magnificent win. Peter, the championship so far been very closely contended. There's only, or there was only 1.5 points separating you and Peter McCrow, but now you've got that extra bit of buffer that must help you as you go to the next round.
Yes, it certainly does. Every point, every half point we can get's a plus, and the further we can get away from Peter, the better. But while I got the chance, we went extra good here because we got some financial help from a company called Dinsan, and we appreciate it very much, and we owe it to them.
You made a few changes on the car in yesterday's practice, and that obviously gave you the gap that you wanted.
Yes, it did. We went harder in the springs and we changed the shock absorbers, and we found a very, very good combination, which obviously worked well.
Anything more left in the car?
Yes, there is, but how quickly we'll find it, who knows?
The two of you seem to have really cleared out from the rest of the field. Is there any likelihood of some other competitors getting into Formula 2 and closing the gaps a little?
Yes, there is. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not too sure, but there's the Golf engine, a Judd Brabham engine that's imported from England, both Peter McCraw and myself use, and they are rather dominant, and there are some people getting some more, and I'm sure they'll move up with them.
We'll look forward to seeing you at our next round as we go to Calder for round 5 of the Australian Formula 2 Championship. Congratulations, Peter. And now it's back to Gary Wilkinson.
Motor racing eats up big bucks, and if you doubt it, just take a look at Gary Wilkinson's big XJS Jaguar. Gary, you're a pretty game man, I think, to take on a car like this.
Yeah, well, I don't know, that's what a lot of people have said, but we want to race the thing, so we decided to give it a go.
A lot of other teams have considered the big Jag and turned it down simply because, as a private concern, it's such a complicated car and eats up so much money. How do you manage?
Well, we work virtually day and night on the car. We've got a lot of friends that are helping me out that work with us as well, you know, to get the thing here.
We saw you in the first 2 rounds of the Touring Car Championship and not since because of a gearbox problem. What's the story there?
We just haven't been able to get a gearbox anywhere, not just in Australia, but in the world. We've had all sorts of dramas, ringing all over the place trying to get a gearbox.
So you finally got one?
We've got one coming, yeah. Hopefully it'll be here next week.
All right, well, we talked about big bucks. How much did that set you back?
Around $6,000.
You haven't got a name on the side of the car. You've virtually got no sponsorship. Does that disappoint you? Because you've been a long-time campaigner in touring cars now and attracted plenty of attention.
Yeah, well, it does disappoint me, but we haven't been able to sort of do anything about it yet. I've had to sell my road car and sell all sorts of bits and pieces to be able to do it.
You used to drive the big Falcon and were very competitive in that here at Amaroo Park. How long do you think before we might see you doing similar things in the Jag?
Well, hopefully now.
Well, we hope so, and of course we want to see you back in action in the Touring Car Championship, because with some of the rounds coming up, some of the circuits, if you can get this car going, are going to suit it very much, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I think Adelaide, we're really looking forward to Adelaide with the long straights, and that this car absolutely loves straights.
Mechanically, let's forget the gearbox. Putting the gearbox aside, what about the engine? Is that a problem to keep it so finely tuned as it obviously has to be?
Well, it hasn't been yet. The engine's been running really good so far, touch wood. We've only just put the race motor in the car for this weekend. The other 2 meetings we just ran with a virtually standard engine in the car.
Thank you, Gary Wilkinson. They're talking with Gary Wilmington, who's preparing for the 20-lap final today to round 1 of the Better Breaks Group A Series here at Amaroo Park. The course just being inspected at the moment after the Formula 2 event, and then we'll have the cars out on the racetrack for the Group E Series, the Stallion Stables Group E Production Car Series. It always provides plenty of entertainment here at Amaroo Park.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I'm looking forward to seeing Brad Jones in action after the scintillating win that he scored in the opening round of the series here at Amaroo last meeting, and the practice times indicate that stallion of his is going just as well again, so the others have really got something to catch. We'll find out all about it when we return with the Stallion Stables Group E race after this break.
And the cars are lining up now for the start of the Stallion Stable Goodyear Group E Production Series. The distance is 8 laps today, and we might take a look how the field in fact will line up from position number 1. Car number 14 is Brad Jones, the young mover, in a hurry. From 2 is car number 22, David Ratcliffe in the Cordia. From 3, car 3, Peter Fitzgerald in the Starion. From 4, car 5, Gary Walden in the RX-7. From 5, car 30, Don Bretland in the Mazda RX-7. From 6, car 2, Stephen Gall, Mr. Motocross in the BMW. From 7 is car number 9, Peter Granger in the Cordia. From 8, car 10, Brian Potts in the Commodore. From 9, car 18, Ross Burbidge in the Starion. From 10 is car number 20, Alan Springett in the Commodore. From 11, 24, Jeff Newton in the Daihatsu. And from 12, car number 29, Ian Green in the Starion. Then also Gerard Murphy, John Clinton, Bruce Gibbs, Richard Gartner, and a full field of 22 starters in this event.
One of the people to watch will be the man that, in fact, didn't qualify in the top dozen. Qualified 13th, in fact, is Gerard Murphy, driving a new Alpha GTV6. And, of course, it was in an Alpha that he was quite famous here at Amaroo a season or two back for weaving his way around the circuit. And it'll be interesting to see what sort of ground he can make through the field here. The man to watch is the man in the class car on the front row.
About 5 seconds away from the start. They're racing, and Brad Jones gets off smartly indeed, but David Radcliffe, even with him as they rest the hill, Gary Walden rather making a good start there, moves up into third, and then Peter Fitzgerald looking for the inside run as they head up the hill for the first time. Peter Granger in the Cordia also away smartly as they drop into Dunlop Loop. And as you can see, the man who has gone through to take the lead is in fact David Radcliffe, and tucked right in behind him is Brad Jones and Gary Walden. Stephen Gorlin, they're running about fifth and getting the machine a little sideways as they head down to Mazda for the first time. Just look how close they are.
Peter Fitzgerald behind Stephen Gall, so he hasn't had quite a good run away from the line, and it's a much better opportunity now for Stephen Gall as we look here at Brad Jones right in behind Radcliffe. The front-wheel drive Cordia being pursued by the Turbo Starion as a full field bustles their way through the left-hander at Monia. And down the back. Gary Walden has got a pretty good run this time as well in the Mazda RX-7.
Jones under real pressure, isn't he? A little surprising. A lot of people thought he'd go straight to the front here and spear away. Poor old Peter Fitzgerald back in fifth or sixth spot at the moment. Doesn't know what it's like to be back there. He dominated for so long in this category.
Getting up to Bitcher Paved Hill again, and as they drop down into Dunlop Loop, you can still see Radcliffe and the Cordia is there, but right behind him is Brad Jones, closing up, looking for the inside run as they come out of the corner. One wheel in the dirt, a little brush up alongside there. Radcliffe knows he's racing. He's going to try and hang on here on the outside. And Gary Walden joins up, and he is looking for the inside and takes it too. Little touch there, perhaps. Stephen Gall has gone for the dirt. He might feel more at home on that. Come down to the left-hander now at Honda, and the action is pretty tight. There's 30 getting in, and Gall...
Bretland, yeah. Gall lost out there. Bretland got through, so did Fitzgerald. Gall persisting with the outside line won't do him any good.
They come out of the lake corner along the straight, and as you can see, car number 14 brings them onto the straightaway, and that's Brad Jones with Gary Walden back behind him. David Radcliffe is the next one to go through, and still the traffic across the straight as they head up Bitcher Paved Hill again.
Well, Radcliffe found out there that there's plenty of muscle in Group E racing, and he was on the receiving end of it. Jones in command, Walden, Radcliffe. The top three down through the loop again.
He's an exciting find, is young Brad Jones. And at the moment, he's got a fellow who knows this circuit better than most, Gary Walden, who's going to keep him honest over the rest of the distance. David Radcliffe still trying to pull back that gap on the second-place driver. Bretland not doing too bad, and Gall in the wars here, but he's managed to pass Fitzgerald. That's no mean feat. So Steve Gall's doing a very, very good job in the Perrier BMW.
Brad Jones up front, 12 months since he began campaigning in the Starion, and by gee, he's had a great deal of success in that short space of time.
Had a lot of motor racing experience though. Gary started motocross racing back in around about 1970 odd, and went right through the junior ranks, C grade and B grade. It was no mean hand at short circuit racing as well, and adapts himself very well to four wheels, and not only driving the Group E Mitsubishi Starion, but is having the occasional pedal in the Brian Thompson Chev Monza as well.
Big car for a young man.
It's a great opportunity to sharpen up his driving skills, and he's looking forward, hopefully, in 1986 with this new sponsor of his in class, a agricultural machinery manufacturer, of perhaps going into Group A.
Jones leads. Walden, Bretland, Radcliffe in the Cordia, and then Stephen Gall in the BMW, pursued by Peter Fitzgerald.
Once again to the lake corner. scrap between first and second has diminished just a little as Walden drops off the pace. Bretland goes through. Next through behind them is Radcliffe, and number 18 in the spot of bother down in the bottom corner has managed to pick it up.
Ross Burbage almost getting himself into hot water again with the over-exuberance and trying to get back online. Bradley Jones, Starion.
Very cool and confident young man. Didn't win the drag off the grid, but didn't get too hot under the collar about being boxed in by Ratcliffe and Walden. Awaited his opportunity and assumed command at the right time and has gone on with the job.
This fellow here's got a lot of talent as well. Gary Walden had an opportunity a couple of years ago to run at the Castrol 400 at Sandown with the Peter Stuyvesant and Alan Moffat team, and of course had a run at the James Hardy 1000 at the same year with Greg Hansford. A little disappointed in the news this week, of course, that Alan Moffat and Mazda have parted company. There's Don Bretland, Radcliffe and Stephen Gore still being pressured by Peter Fitzgerald.
Yeah, it's a good dice, this one.
Stephen feeling much happier today. He had a terrible practice run yesterday. They cooked the car. The car's been rebuilt over the Christmas and summer period. And a minor malfunction in the cooling system yesterday, and Stephen only got a couple of laps of practice, but fortunately it put him into a reasonable position on the grid. And in this second heat today, their starting order from the grid is determined by their finishing order in the first heat. So Stephen's managed to bring himself up on the grid and mix it with some good company. And at the moment, Peter Fitzgerald is really having to summons up all of the talent that he's earned and worked for over the years to get past the 4 times the motocross champions, 78, 80, 81 and 82.
So there'll be a lot of our motorcycling enthusiasts very keen to follow the form of Steve Gall here at Amaroo today, having his first up start in the Perrier car at Amaroo Park. And he's not doing a bad job at all. To anyone who can keep Peter Fitzgerald out around this course, when you consider Fitzgerald virtually owned all the checkered flags here last season.
Jerry Murphy creeping into the back there as well, getting a little closer behind Peter Fitzgerald. Stephen Gall went to the States for the wrap the first 5 or 6 weeks of this year and unfortunately put himself out of business when he ran a drill right through his hand in preparing his Yamaha for one of the big events over there, and I think he may have lost the BMW.
He was just looking for a hurdle, something to jump. Oh, there's one that has found the concrete wall in the bottom corner, car number 59, and that's young Ezio Sanelli. Close enough.
Close enough to the wall, all right.
He has really clouted the wall in a big way at the end of the lake corner.
Talking about close enough, they're still at it. Gall and Fitzgerald. Peter Fitzgerald was only lamenting when I spoke to him this morning that he spent so much time this year putting effort into his Stanlite Porsche that here he goes underneath. But Gall, he's got plenty of gall. No doubt about that.
Oops. Jerry Murphy got into the act there, but that didn't work out.
Last lap board is out. Yes, Fitzgerald lamenting that he hasn't put the preparation time into the Starion this year that he ought to have. I think this might be a very clear warning to him that it's time he did some homework.
Dropping down into the loop area. And here's our leader coming onto the back straight now. That, of course, is Brad Jones, has done this very, very well indeed. Car number 14, winner here at the last meeting at Amaroo Park. Gary Walden back behind him in car number 5. So they swing through Honda corner now for the final time and head down to the right-hander at the lake. Walden perhaps a little closer this time than he was 3 or 4 laps back. Don Bretland still holding down 3rd in the other Mazda RX-7. 4th place being held by David Radcliffe. Stephen Gall is 5th and still under some pressure, let me tell you, in the last corner from Peter Fitzgerald, diving under him as we pick them up coming into the last corner on their way to the checkered flag. And the win today in the Stay-In Stables Goodyear race will go to Brad Jones. 2nd goes to Gary Walden. 3rd place to Bretland, and look at the rest of them still coming through. 4th place will go to 22 Radcliffe and Stephen Gall. A great 5th place in his first drive here at Amaroo. Let's recap the placings for you. In the Stay-In Stables Goodyear Group E Series, the winner, Bradley Jones in the Starion. 2nd place going to Gary Walden in the RX-7. And 3rd place going to Don Bretland in another Mazda RX-7. We'll take a break and then come back for more live motor racing action from Sydney's Amaroo Park.
Back at Amaroo Park, just in time to see Chris Davis presenting the trophy to Brad Jones on behalf of Stallion Stable Goodyear for his victory in today's round of the series here at Amaroo Park. And a really fantastic effort, I think, coming off the front row of the grid as you did. It wasn't all that easy, was it, today?
No, it wasn't at all. It was a very hard race today, or start was. The courtier got me off over the top of the hill. And it was hard work until I got past him. And then got followed by Gary, which was good because he wasn't quite quick enough to catch me.
That car of yours, how long have you had this one now?
Oh, it's a new car at the start of it. We got it last year. We've done a lot of work with it, but it's a new car. Yeah.
The competition's getting closer and getting keener all the time, and whilst you may not have seen it back in behind you, people like Stephen Gall and Peter Fitzgerald were really keeping everybody else pretty busy.
Yes, well, you've got to keep on stepping ahead. We've, since our last meeting here, really kept on working on the car. We've changed the suspension a great deal since we were here last. And our time showed as well. You've got to keep on moving ahead, otherwise you soon get gobbled up.
Moving from here to other circuits, how much changing is there required when you do move from circuit to circuit?
Well, we run on different tyres at different circuits, so there is a lot to do to change a car.
Yeah. All right, well, as far as the point standings are concerned, 2 starts, 2 wins, big smile.
Yeah, it's very good, isn't it?
Brad Jones, winner of 2 rounds now of the Stallion Stable Goodyear Series here at Amaroo Park. We're taking you back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Gary Wilkinson. A driver who has added a lot of zest to this year's 1985 Australian Touring Car Championship is one of the fastest Kiwis to visit Australia, Robbie Francevic, who comes from Perth all the way back to Sydney. That must be playing havoc with you, all this commuting back to New Zealand between the events.
Oh, it certainly is. And, you know, coming back from Perth, I was telling everyone on the weekend how I was going to drive the transporter. And after talking to about 30 people, I decided to fly back to Sydney.
How difficult is it after each round going back to take care of your business affairs in New Zealand, then being back here to run the next round of the touring car title?
I thought it was going to be easy, but it's now proved impossible back home. I go back home to work and there is only one thing in my mind, and that's the Australian Touring Car Championship. And I just can't work, so I've handed the whole thing over to my management and they're running the business for me.
I remember you told Gary Wilkinson at Sandown a few weeks ago what you really wanted most out of this racing was to be accepted by the local races. Has that happened as yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has, because there's starting to build up quite a bit of aggravation between us drivers, and it's just like it is back home now, and that's what it's all about. We're all very competitive and we're all going to have our arguments, and that's what's happening.
When you say aggravation, in what sense?
Well, I can tell that Peter's not as friendly as he was when I first came here, and I've already had a run-in with Frank Gardner and his crew, so things are getting just like it is back home.
You feel like an unwelcome visitor?
I'm now starting to feel at home because I'm feeling unwelcome.
Is that spurring you on, though, in your approach now to the remaining rounds of the touring car title?
You know, I'm just so determined now, and the whole idea was to run Bathurst, and all our parts are sourced from Europe. And it's hard for Mark, but I'm hounding him to death, and there's still 6 rounds to go, and I'm going to get all my bits here in time to get it all built after Calder, and then we'll be running again.
So today you're running without 1 gear?
Yeah, well, we rebuilt the gearbox and left the 4th gear out because it was going to take the rest of the gears out. So it's a little bit awkward around this little track.
We'll give it your best shot.
Thank you very much.
Well, Robbie Francevic, a very determined man, not only in the Australian Touring Car Championship, but also in the Better Breaks Group A Series here today at Amaroo Park. Here's Neil Crompton.
You know, for close, exciting action, it's very hard to beat Formula V racing here at Amaroo Park. And today, with the second round of the 1985 Coca-Cola Series, we're going to once again see some very spectacular racing. You may recall that last time, Bernie Hanley and Ian Simpson had a great dice, and with me is one of the men involved in that, Ian Simpson from Queensland. It should be a great day.
Yes, I'm looking very forward to it, Neil.
Now, tell us about your car. It's one of what we would call the new generation cars. What distinguishes that from the older type cars?
Well, basically, there was a lot of thought gone into the design of the front and rear suspension to eliminate any form of bump steer, and that's basically the difference.
Now, your car, I talked to you before, around about $10,000, yet Bernie's car, nearly 10 years old and probably worth a lot less than that. The two of them are so evenly matched. Why is that?
Well, a circuit like Amaroo, here, this is probably the only circuit in Australia that Bernie's car would be equally as competitive as our motor car because the corners are so fast and so tight that we have a little bit of a flexing problem with the back end of our style of motor car, and I think that sort of gives Bernie the edge. So we've got to work a little harder than what Bernie does, I feel.
Why is Formula V racing so close and exciting?
I think it's because it's the dollars can't outspend the next guy. I think it's a close formula, a very tight set of stringent rules and regulations, and if we don't comply, then we're out. So every car's checked and double checked. So that's basically it.
What kind of modifications are allowed to the engine?
Well, basically blueprinting and balancing is the major factor, and also the components from one model motor to another, knowing what to put together is also one of the secrets.
Have you found anything in the last 4 or 5 weeks to do something about the incredible Bernie Hanley?
No, just panicked.
So thanks, Ian. Well, there we have some of the details about the exciting Formula V racing here at Amaroo Park today. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more action right after this.
Cars getting ready to go in the Coca-Cola Bottlers Formula V, Round 2 rather. Bernie Henley on the front row of the grid driving a Renmax along with Peter Ledix. Phil Lewis and David Koth on the second line, then Ian Simpson and Stephen David. Frank Kleinig and Ken Taylor, David Smith and Ray Johnston, Robert Bennett and Sergio Lavamakoko. They're the top 12.
And they're racing, and Bernie Hanley gets off the grid very, very quickly indeed, with Peter Ladix racing up to him, and he sits in the draft as they head up the hill. Phil Lewis dropping into third, and then 76 Ian Simpson of Queensland making a very good start too. He'll come out in fourth place as they drop into Dunlop Loop for the first time, but it is Bernie Hanley, the same place and the same face, and he leads the pack again through Dunlop Loop and heading down towards Mazda Corner.
Peter Ladix in second place, Phil Lewis in third. I don't know whether it's a new car or just a new paint job, but it looks pretty spick and span. It's car number 4, a Renmax of a different, slightly different configuration to Bernie Henley's, although carrying the same brand name. In fact, the top 3 cars carry the Renmax name.
All safely through Honda Corner and heading down to the lake now for the first time. And Bernie in car number 1. Still unsponsored, 15 years old is the machine. Bernie was telling me before the race. It's old enough to vote 1.5 times. They come up to the strike with 1 lap down and 9 still to run in the Coca-Cola Bottlers Formula V Series here at Amaroo. And super vet Bernie Hanley at the head of the pack.
Nose to tail, the cars stream through. Henley, Ladix and Lewis. Very hard to get a break on the field in these little machines.
Certainly some slingshot racing in the Formula Vs at Amaroo. Down to Honda Corner on the exit now. Up 1 round, 16 in the middle of the pack. Now he's waving. 91 still hit him.
David Cutts driving a Spectre. Well, he was driving it. He's now stationary in the middle of the road, and he's going to have to jump out and push it off very quickly.
From Spectre to Spectator. 2 laps completed, 8 remain in the Coca-Cola Bottlers Formula V, and Bernie still leads them across the strike, and up Bitcher Pave again.
The man at the tail of that line of traffic there, Frank Kleinig, might well be a force to be reckoned with before the race is through. A man of long experience. Hello, looks like Bernie might have lost the lead. Oh no, he's got it back, kept the inside line.
Phil Lewis, though, moving up very, very closely to Bernie Hanley. Made a dart at that time in Dunlop. Through Mazda and down to the left-hander at Honda. You see all the jockeying for positions going on in the middle of the pack. All through there safely.
And the 1983 national champion, Ian Simpson, squeezing up there in 4th place as well and knocking on the door for 3rd.
The freight train along to Camalco Corner. Still Phil Lewis keeping the pressure on. And Ian Simpson there sitting right in now. Number 4, Lewis making his run here on the outside of Peter Ladix. And also Simpson 3 wide, looking for the inside cut as they come over and drop into the right-hander.
Simpson's made the big move.
That was a good move too.
Second spot, Lewis relegated to third, and Ladix pushed back to fourth. Then we've got Stephen David in car number 2, David Coath from Victoria in car 71, and Frank Kleinig in car number 9 brings up the rear in that division. And they've broken away from the rest of the field, almost 2 races in 1 here.
Hanley out of Honda Corner with a very, very hot pursuer in Ian Simpson in car number 76. And back in third is still Phil Lewis, who we thought may have been able to go on with that last time. Hanley out against the wall, and Simpson.
Simpson's always the one that looks as though he wants to go quicker, but just can't seem to find a way around.
Here they come, the freight train of Formula V's along the front straight here at Amaroo Park. You can see how close they go to the guardrail as they come out of the corner, and they swing across to the inside to take the right-hand kink up.
Here comes Lewis, makes a move, it doesn't work. Simpson holds on to second, and Henley, untroubled by it all, maintains pride of place out front. Ladix under pressure for his 4th spot in the race from Stephen David. David Coath still in there as well, and here comes number 9, Frank Kleinig, one of the old campaigners in this category, and in car 2 that's Stephen David. And here's the man that was in 2nd spot in the little blue Renmax, Peter Ladix, finding himself well back in the traffic now.
Ian Simpson still has it all to do if he's going to be able to pull a win away from Bernard Klaus Hanley.
Stephen David has got by Ladix, and it looks like Kleinig may have also. Yes, he has in car 9. So Bernie Henley continues to lead. Ian Simpson and Phil Lewis, and a right royal battle going on back here for 4th and 5th places.
I think Bernie might have lost out in that joust because Ian Simpson, in fact, has just nosed in front as they came down to Mazda Corner. Now Hanley goes back out after him again. Good scrap going on for the lead as they head down to the Lake Corner. There they are. As you can see, Ian Simpson has gone through to take over the lead.
4 laps remaining.
Now Bernie under a little bit of pressure, but he loves this. 44 years of age, been racing for 22 years. Just watch the way that he puts Ian Simpson under a little bit of pressure. He will sit there behind Ian Simpson until
the cows come home.
The mirrors are just full of Bernie's smiling jaws, and he'll pull out of the draft at the last moment. That's if everything goes to plan, because that's what he's done here for the last 2 seasons. Simpson in 76 from Queensland leads from Bernie Hanley. Back in third is Phil Lewis in car number 4. Even though he might drop back 4 or 5 spots, there's one thing you rarely see at Amaroo, and that's an untidy Bernie Hanley.
Well, Ian Simpson chased Henley home last meeting. Can he reverse the positions this time?
You know, I think Bernie's going to wait to the last lap, bring the curtain down. Along the straight to Camalco Corner again, with laps running out. Number 2 going through, Stephen David. He's back in that 2nd group as they head off back up Bitchapave. He's keeping the pressure on Frank Kleinig, pulls to the outside of him and passes Kleinig halfway up Bitchapave Hill.
Kleinig's car just not as competitive as we've seen it the last couple of seasons. Normally running up towards the front. But the leading trio with a good break here as the race winds down towards the finish. The Queenslander Simpson leads Bernie Henley. Phil Lewis in 3rd place. He's been there virtually from the outset, Lewis. There's been a lot of chopping and changing going on around him, but he hasn't been able to improve his position.
Heading down to the Lake Corner, the right-hander, number 4, Phil Lewis, keeping the pressure on Hanley to get on with it with Ian Simpson. Up to Camalco Corner again. And as they come across, Hanley is very, very close indeed. Sits in the draft here as they head up the hill, whether it'll jump out or not.
2 laps remain.
Dropping down into Dunlop Loop.
This could well see a tie in the point score after this second round of the Coca-Cola Series, because if Simpson comes home the winner, he picks up 9 points. Bernie Hanley will get 6, which will be an exact reversal, as Gary suggested, as the way they finished after the first round.
Wilco's a bit of a betting man. Would you still have your money on Simpson, Gary?
I still put my money on Bernie Henley.
Well, that's a gap in Formula V terms from the leader back to second. And, of course, Phil Lewis, who's been in that front-running bunch since the race started.
They're about to put the last lap board out.
A little bit of pressure now on Ian Simpson as he comes up. Drops into a Wonderlic corner. And there's the signal. Last lap. Come on, Bernie.
This is about my form, though, is to get onto a horse after it's won 8 races straight and then back at the day it loses.
Aha, a little bit of gamesmanship now going on as they're going to drop down into Dunlop Loop, and Bernie was...
Oh, goodness me. Nearly lost half the bodywork.
Yeah, Bernie's had a bonnet bob up. And in fact, Simpson didn't do a bad job of covering his tracks on the approach to Dunlop corner. I think that might have Bernie just a little bit upset into the left-hander at Honda corner. Great scrap this in the Formula Vs. Now watch Hanley as he stays to the outside. He's going to make a big duck if he can do it down here on the inside. No, he can't. He swung to the outside hoping that Simpson is going to come out against the wall. He's going to duck back underneath him again. And just look at this as they come to the last corner, and Bernie says, ha ha ha, done ya. Back to Queensland you go. Send down the troops. Bernie Hanley, the super vet, across the line and the sprint to the flag. And I don't know what Ian Simpson has to do after all of that. And Phil Lewis is going to pick up 3rd place. Well, what an absolutely outstanding Formula V race. Let's recap the placings for you. In the rush to the checkered flag, the win has gone to super vet Bernie Hanley in car number 1, 2nd place. Of course, to Ian Simpson of Queensland, and 3rd place going to Phil Lewis in the Renmax. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll take a break and return live for more action from Amaroo Park.
Back here at Amaroo Park, I've just thrown away the list of questions that I spent the last 3 laps composing for Ian Simpson, because blow me down if I'm not talking to Bernie Henley once more. Congratulations, Bernie. Here's the trophy. Please accept it.
Thank you very much.
You've got the sash, which you certainly deserve. I really thought for a minute we weren't going to have the pleasure of having another chat.
Well, I thought so too. Actually, it was quite a hard race. I wasn't intending to make this as hard as that. But now Ian is a very committed driver.
Well,
he's always shining up well at Amaroo.
Well, I think the two of them, both Ian and Phil Lewis, certainly gave you no peace right from the start.
Now, I had a good look at Phil when I was running second, and I thought, no, it's not close enough yet to get me. So I was quite content to stay there, because I knew it was going to be on in the last lap.
I thought you were going to lose the whole body shell on the last lap.
Well, so did I. So did I, yes, yes.
Ian?
Ian's car got a bit wide, you see.
Just briefly, that, I think, would put the pair of you level now in the points series for the Coca-Cola Formula V trophy here at Amaroo Park.
No, that's not quite right, Gary.
Not quite?
No, Bernie's won both rounds. I've run second to him.
Oh,
so,
it would have been if you'd won. You see, I was counting my chickens before they were hatched.
Next time.
Doesn't always, next time? Okay, we look forward to it, because if the racing continues at that standard, and Phil as well, I think we're going to enjoy this, as we always do, right throughout the season at Amaroo Park. Bernie Henley receiving the due congratulations of his fellow competitors after today's round. Let's take you back now to Mike Raymond.
Today, yet another one-make series debuts here at Amaroo. This time it involves some of Australia's most accomplished motor racers, all driving Nissan ET showroom models. With the exception of a roll cage and full harness, the cars are identical to the stock standard units available from any Nissan outlet. Each round will be won on driving ability alone, as the drivers draw the car they will race and their starting positions on the morning of the event. One-make series are nothing new to Amaroo Park, nor to Queensland's own master of disaster, Dick Johnson. Dick tripped a TR7 in spectacular circumstances here a few years ago, and last season went to extraordinary lengths to save on tyre wear in the Alpha Series.
They're on on 4 wheels, and they're all on the bitumen at the moment. We'll just see what happens at the end of the series.
You haven't had much luck with these one-make series, though.
Well, I don't think I've had much luck with anything, to be quite honest, but maybe this is a turning point.
What interests a driver who's pretty committed to the Touring Car Championship to, well, a gimmick series?
Dollars and cents, full stop.
I think there's a definite place in motorsport for the one design races. I've had some joy with them in the past, and hope for some more joy this year. It's a good money series too, and I'm interested in that.
I've driven open wheelers all my life, so this will be a bit of an education. I haven't actually driven a turbo car before either, so I'm looking forward to it in a masochistic sort of way.
The ET Pulse is an excellent little road-holding car. It goes well, and we want to explain this to the people of Australia. And what better sort of a line could we take than to get the best skilled drivers around the good circuits of the whole place? And we look forward to some very close racing. We're going to be very strict on the drivers. We don't want any nonsense from them. We expect them to use their skill and their intelligence. And I think that you're going to see some excellent racing as this whole series on Channel 7 really goes to air.
Well, Jeff, you're in some illustrious road racing company here.
Yes, I am. I've got the feeling that I have been thrown in at the deep end. I think I told Howard quite some time back that it was the only way he was going to get me racing is if he put me in a car. So this is what he's done to me. I think it's sort of like revenge.
Well, you couldn't have picked any tougher company.
No, but then again, I suppose you couldn't really pick better teachers either, so that's what I'll be out here trying to do, learn.
Well, thank you, Jeff Portman. Jeff is one of 12 drivers contesting the Nissan ET Celebrity Series here at Amaroo Park and a number of the other major circuits around Australia. We'll take a break and then return for all of the action.
Stand by for super action at Amaroo Park in the Super Challenge, the Nissan Turbo Super Challenge. Identical cars and all the top drivers involved. And this really is going to provide some of the best racing that we've seen here so far this year. Let's check the grid for the Nissan Turbo Super Challenge.
And on the front row, from position 1, Dick Johnson from Queensland, the reigning Australian Touring Car Champion. Alongside him, Gary Rogers. On the second row, Gary Scott from Queensland, and alongside him, his Nissan teammate, George Fury. On the third row, Jimmy Richards will be out there, the leader in the Australian Touring Car Championship, and he'll be alongside Colin Bond. Then the next row, Jeff Portman, a former Australian Rally Champion, alongside the current Australian Formula 1 Champion, John Bowe. Behind them, Alan Grice, Glenn Seaton, and on the last row of the grid, Steve Masterton and Peter McKay.
Sure is a mix of people there, isn't there? Rally champions, touring car champions.
Everyone. Of course, the first heat earlier today was won by Peter McKay. He goes to be the backmarker in Heat 2. We'll explain that to you as the race progresses. So Queensland's Dick Johnson and Victoria's Gary Rogers share the front row for the second heat today. There's Tricky Dicky. Flag ready to go up. And they're racing in the Nissan ET Super Series at Amaroo Park with Gary Rogers winning the jump, trying to make the move across the track, but Johnson gets away smartly as they head up the hill. Gary Scott also away briskly in company with George Fury, Richards and Bond, and then Jeff Portman and the backmarkers Steve Masterton and Peter McKay as they drop down into Dunlop Loop, where Johnson takes over command into the left-hander. Or the right-hander. Look at this, car number 9 out sideways.
George Fury, he's used to that.
Oops. So Fury in a spot of bother, and that allows car number 4 up on the inside. That's Alan Grice. He placed second in a heat earlier today. And Grice comes across the inside of McKay there, along with young Glenn Seaton as they head down, one almost sideways, coming down the hill.
Oh,
back
3,
behind
4,
them.
5, 6 up in the sideways. Goodness gracious me.
And here they are trying to get out of the rough. They've all managed to get their way back out onto the racetrack again. Number 1, Peter McKay, taking some evasive action there. It all happened in front of him.
Goodness me, Glenn Seaton was involved in that. John Bowe, Steve Masterton.
There's Howard Marsden really worrying whether or not he's down 6 ETs.
Oh, heavens above.
Would someone in the ET please call home?
Cars everywhere, but Dick Johnson continues to lead from Gary Rogers at this stage with pieces of motor vehicles strewn across the circuit.
Well, here's Dick Johnson. He leads over the top of Bitcher Pave and dropping down into Dunlop Loop. Handling the car quite well as he swings out of the corner.
Colin Bond was one of those involved in that mix-up and didn't rejoin the race. In fact, he's still off the side of the circuit somewhere. Most of the others seem to be back and running.
There's Johnson going through. The cars behind him will wait and catch.
Rogers
Gary
second,
Rogers.
Gary Scott third.
Heading down to the lake corner.
Jim Richards in fourth spot.
As they come out of the lake corner, Johnson running away with this one. Still Rogers holding down from Gary Scott, then Bond being the next one.
Oh, Bond is back on the circuit.
Car number 7.
He's done well.
It's been a long while since I've seen all these guys playing for keeps quite like they are at the moment. There's $25,000 in a Nissan Skyline up for grabs at the end of this 7-round series.
No wonder they're playing for keeps.
Gary Rogers being bustled out of the way by Gary Scott from Queensland. Rogers gets it all crossed up. All 1.5 litre front-wheel drive, turbocharged Nissan Pulsars, about 115 odd brake horsepower. The tyres weren't buffed prior to this race. The cars have had little or no work done to them. In with the roll cage, in with the harness, and out on the track.
They're magnificently turned out cars.
The only thing they've really changed to enhance their performance is they've all got the Hardy Parado DS11 brake pads in them so that they can withstand the sort of punishment that these guys are going to dish out.
Well, Gary Rogers here in car number 11, and of course Colin Bond in car number 7, keeping him very, very honest. Then Jim Richards coming up the inside of the pair of them, but ducks in. Fury is the next one back behind them as they come back across the line at Amaroo Park. With Dick Johnson looking quite comfortable at this stage as they head up Bitcher Pave Hill again. Bond up the inside this time on Gary Rogers as they go to the top of the hill. There's Scott going through. Rogers, the next one, followed by Bond, Richards, then George Fury. Great little scrap this. A lot of people thinking that maybe George Fury and Gary Scott would dominate the opening round because of their racing in the Nissan machines over the past season or so.
I think Alan Grice has probably had more experience in these cars than anybody else. He and Glenn Seaton, perhaps. Although Seaton is out of the race. One of those that was caught up in that tangle.
Well, here comes Colin Bond. Through the right-hander and manages to squeeze his way through on the inside.
So Bond makes the move. Oh, Richards goes through as well. Look how close they are. Little tap on there, right underneath Howard Marsden's eye. The obedience stick will be out later.
Bond, yes.
They all think it's marvellous. The only one who's not smiling is Howard. Fred Gibson.
Interesting thing there, Mike, as of April the 15th, Fred Gibson will take over the Nissan motor racing operation in Melbourne, and Howard Marsden has moved higher up the tree.
I can say it's not my responsibility.
Moving through Dunlop, there's Glenn Seaton's Nissan. And it looks like something's missing on that Nissan.
Oh, boy. There's Alan Grice. Midfield and trying to improve, but look at that, wheels up.
George Fury crashing his way through on Gary Rogers.
Portman in there as well.
It didn't take them long to start bending motor cars. I think it was a honeymoon in the first heat this morning, and now they're stuck right into it. Howard Marsden looks on and starts counting the dollars.
I think he's probably counting the cars. At 12 went out and only 11 are still running. This great scrap still continues as they come out onto their last lap. Heading up the hill. Bond breaking away from the pack. There's John Bowe coming up on the inside of Jim Richards. There's Dick Johnson, though, changing another gear halfway through the turn.
A bit unusual, isn't it?
It is a bit. He's probably had the turbo come on. Down towards Mazda corner. And the Nissan Super Challenge is being headed by Queensland's Dick Johnson. And that might almost make Dick's first win of the year. He hasn't had the... a great run in the Touring Car Championship collecting checkered flags, but it looks like he might get up here today, and there's a lot of money at stake in this Nissan Super Series.
He's got a good lead over Gary Scott. Colin Bond holding down third place ahead of Gary Rogers as they come around to take the checkered flag. Untroubled for Dick Johnson. Out goes the flag.
So Dick Johnson comes in to take the flag after winning the first round of the Nissan Super Series. here at Amaroo Park this afternoon. And some very, very close and hard racing prevailing throughout the day here as well.
Dick Johnson, yes, acknowledges the cheers of the crowd. A winner in the Nissan Super Challenge. Gary Scott second, Colin Bond third. And we'll be talking with Dick Johnson when we return after this break. Well, Dick Johnson took the checkered flag in that round of the Nissan Super Challenge, but of course it was the second race of the day for these cars, and they're still trying to work out who has won the trophy. Dick, you were pretty lucky that the second race there operated off a reverse grid, because there was an awful lot of action going on behind you.
Yeah, well, don't forget I was number 12 in the first race, so I had to do it the hard way the first time, so everything comes to those who waits, doesn't it?
Did you know that Howard Marsden has taken up nail biting as a hobby?
Actually, I wonder if he got any fingers left, actually.
Mike Raymond told me to say this. He said, tell Dick it was about time he won something.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What's he want, more jewellery or something?
Right, here comes the judge's decision. Dick Johnson. Oh, look, here we are. Buy yourself a drink, pal.
Gee, thanks very much.
Congratulations. This, of course, the series carries big bucks and a big prize at the end of it. Everybody was pretty serious out there, all jokes aside.
You know, I suppose this is the first meeting, so it's all very new to everyone, but I can assure you as the series unwinds, and it's a little bit tough up near the front, I think you'll find that there'll be a lot of guys doing desperate things, and I just hope I'm not on the receiving end again.
They're potent little cars, and let's face it, they're not really set up for racetrack racing. That makes them a bit of a handful, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does. Seeing the tyres aren't buffed or anything like that, it's very difficult to control them. They're like marshmallows, but that's not due to the car. That's basically because they're unbuffed radial tyres.
Colin Bond survived that one, because I can hear him laughing from here. So I'll let you go down and share a drink with the rest of the guys who did survive a very adventuresome opening round of the Nissan Turbo Super Challenge here at Amaroo Park. Right now, we're going to take you to Neil Crompton.
So far in season 1985, the JPS Team BMWs have been the cars to beat. In the Australian Touring Car Championship, they lead the series, and drivers Jim Richards and Neville Crichton have really been a problem for other competitors. This weekend, in the first round of the 1985 Better Brakes Series, the Team BMWs are going to get even stronger, and Frank Gardner, a new car for Tony Longhurst, a new driver with Glenn Malloy, and of course Jim Richards as well.
Yes, we've certainly got our plate full, and there's a few people who would argue that we're the car to beat. I think there's some Volvos out there, and there's certainly some Commodores. We're not alone, and it's very competitive, and there's only points a second splitting it up. So we know we have our hands full, but it's the name of the game, development.
Why the reason for going to the 2.3-litre 323?
Well, it looks like in about 86, that's probably the sort of car we will be aiming ourselves to race. It's a state-of-the-art, lighter, faster motor cars. And that seems to be with turbocharging or four-valve heads. It's hard to say which way to go, but I think we'll be going with a lighter car, four-valve head, eventually.
The responsibilities of being a team manager with so many cars, it must be difficult.
Yeah, it's like running a kindergarten. You're looking around for your pupils all the time.
Yesterday in practice, the smaller car, no problems?
No, Tony settled into it really well. He's done some very good times. We're very pleased with it. It looks about right and feels about right, and Tony looks good, so we're pretty happy with that.
What about the car that Glenn Malloy is driving? What's the history of that car?
That was Jimmy Richards' Group C car of last year. Glenn's taken that over in Group A form and settling into it. He's done not a great deal of motor racing, but he's settling in and fast becoming a bit of a force to be reckoned with.
And your team looking after that car?
Well, we're keeping an eye on it. It gets maintained out of our shop, and Jimmy Richards and such are a little bit helpful along those lines with driver tips, and it's just bringing more people into the Group A scene.
Well, the newest member of the BMW assault is Glenn Malloy, and after having driven a few years ago, it's a welcome return back to Amaroo Park. It must be an exciting prospect to get in a car that's already race prepared.
It certainly is. The car's very, very competitive, and hopefully with Frank Gardner's help, I'll be able to get my driving skills up to a standard that I can be fairly competitive with the car.
And how did you feel yesterday in practice? You coming as one with the car quickly or not?
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of laps in the car yet, but yesterday's practice went very well, and we got into mid-sevens, and, you know, we expect to run somewhere around the middle of the field and progressively get quicker and quicker.
Hoping to run the Touring Car Championship?
This year, no. I think this year's just a learning phase for me, getting used to the car, and then I think next year it'll decide on the next step, whether that be this car in touring cars or whether we look at building a new car.
Well, good luck. Hope all goes well.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more exciting motor racing when we return to Amaroo Park.
Here's the grid for round 2, the Comalco Wonderlic Sports Sedan Series at Amaroo Park. Mark Trenouth from Queensland in the big Jag is on pole position. Mike Griffin alongside him in the Mazda RX-7. Then Peter Fitzgerald, Porsche, and Brian Thompson in the Monza. Bob Tyndall driving a Tirana. John Burke in a Celica. Peter McLeod, Mazda RX-7, and Des Wall driving a Tirana. Gary Scott, the Nissan Turbo. Ian Stones, the Mazda RX-7. John Vernon driving an Escort, and Bill Attard in an RX-7. They're the top 12. But it is a huge field of 24 cars stretched right back to the corner, the Comalco Wonderlic corner here at Amaroo Park. And I'll tell you what, if there are any hard charges down near the rear of the field, the guys up front will want to look out for themselves.
Well, there's no way that anyone's going to break formation and jump off the rear of the grid. There's just no place to go. There's a wall of cars in front of them. Mark Trenouth of Queensland and the Jaguar, who performed so well here at the last meeting, sharing the front row with 41 Mike Griffin and a very improved Mazda RX-7. The flag shortly to go up with about 10 seconds, 8 seconds away from the start of the Comalco Wonderlic Sports Sedan Series round 2. And they get away from the start, and it's Griffin in the Nippon Auto Spares Mazda that just bounces out. The big Monza of Brian Thompson got away smartly as well, and Fitzgerald made a bolt from into third place as they went over the hill for the first time. And the order is, as they go through, Trenouth, who has caught another gear and gone back to take over the lead. Griffin dropping into second place. Fitzgerald is third as they head down the back part of the course down towards Mazda Corner. Wow! Thompson going through the rough and back out onto the racetrack again as the field speeds by, including Gary Scott there in the Nissan.
Trenouth, Griffin, Fitzgerald, and John Burke in the Celica holding down fourth spot, 77. Then comes 14, Brian Thompson in the big Monza. Oh, there's a ton of power here. Trenouth in the big XJS Jaguar.
Here's Thompson trying to come back through the field. Peter McLeod going through in the Slick 50 Mazda. And some of the lines they're using for the approaches to the corners, unbelievable. They head up the hill again and drop into Dunlop Loop. Mark Trenouth in the Jaguar, all the way down from Queensland and the Colombon entry. He heads them nicely along the back part of the course down towards Mazda.
Series leader Mark Trenouth came here for the first round of the Comalco Wonderlic Series for 85 as an experiment, not expecting to win in the big Jaguar, and did so. Obviously, he's got to come back. And look at the space he's putting in them as he goes down to the lake corner. 30 metres now, 35 metres clear of Griffin in the RX-7, Fitzgerald's Porsche.
Brian Thompson then in the Monza, the next one through. Tyndall and Burke also there, and so too is McLeod. And Gary Scott of Queensland in the Nissan going through, and there's the rest of the field tacking up behind them. One slowing there on the inside as they come up to the Wonderlic corner. Meantime, Fitzgerald has, let me see, yes, he's hauled in our second running, Mike Griffin. But that little RX-7, improved one, has certainly got some pace as it heads down to Mazda Corner.
The Mike Griffin RX-7 is the car that was run at Bathurst last year by Ron Gillard, still running the 13B peripheral port rotary engine. But where they've made a lot of their gains is in weight. They've ripped everything out of the body and trimmed about 150 kilograms off the car. And it was the original, car number 86 in trouble here. And
it's Ken Davison.
Ken Davison. He was in trouble as they came out of late corner the last time, as we look here at Griffin and Fitzgerald. And John Burke and Brian Thompson were mixing it up there as well.
Thompson's got by Burke and is making a big charge now on Fitzgerald and Griffin. They'd better look out because that big Monza is going to mow them down shortly.
Well, Burke had problems with a gearbox yesterday, and there's a great scrap on here as well, with Peter McLeod bringing up the rear in the Mazda RX-7.
Bob Tyndall in there as well. And Des Wall in the Tirana leading this trio. Under pressure from Tyndall. Tyndall's got the inside running and takes Wall. McLeod trying to get through as well. Should do so. No, just hasn't quite got the power.
This is the car that McLeod used in the Australian Touring Car and Endurance Championships, and McLeod was the 83 Australian Endurance Champion. And giving that to Rana Heap. Look at this battle here with Griffin leading. Fitzgerald second, in that group of cars at least. And then Brian Thompson, the leader of the Australian GT Championship after one round at Lakeside. Fitzgerald not having the best of days so far today. And that Mazda RX-7 that Griffin is driving was the very first RX-7 in the country, as now Brian Thompson goes through and picks up one extra position.
So Thompson into third place.
Thompson is definitely the man on the move in the Camelco Wonderlic Sports Sedan Series here today. He's managed to get past Fitzgerald and will now make a run at Mike Griffin. And if he can get rid of Griffin quickly, he may have some hope of pulling back Mark Trenouth, who is probably 110 metres, 120 metres ahead of them on the road. Down to Honda corner. Watch the speed of the Monza, the acceleration as it comes booming down towards the lake corner.
Halfway mark, 5 laps remaining in this round 2. The Camelco Wonderlic Sports Sedan Series. There's the leader, Trenouth. Griffin second. Here's the big Monza. Thompson. Oh, gee. Fitzgerald glued to his tail.
About 600 brake horsepower from the Chev-powered Monza. And on paper should be able to reel in this car of Griffin's. But of course the Griffin mobile much, much lighter. Perhaps a little better suited to the tight spaces here at Amaroo. Not as hard on its tyres. But look at Brian Thompson, 50 years of age, a veteran in the sport. And inching closer all the time to the back of the RX-7.
Oh, one upside down in the bottom corner.
Peter Davis.
The car has collided there, and Davis is still in the machine. The marshal's running quickly to the scene of the accident. There's Davis trying to push the window or the door open. One of the marshals obligingly opens the door so he can scramble out. That's 7.
It's a Capri, car 67.
And he's been able to get out and walk away.
There's somebody else involved in that. It's a little bit hard to see just from this angle.
The race continues still with Mark Trenouth. Here's what happened. We caught the car 67 getting upside down, really landing heavily there.
And fuel coming out from the back of the car there as well, Mike.
But the officials were very quickly on the scene and able to assist that driver to climb and walk away in safety.
Race leader's about to pass that point. In fact, Mark Trenouth, he does so now with caution. Meantime, Griffin has faded out of affairs. Brian Thompson in the Monza is in second place and closing rapidly on Trenouth. Fitzgerald is third, Griffin is fourth.
Thompson's got quite a bit more horsepower than Trenouth in the V12 Jag, which is producing about 520, but it's a fairly heavy car, about 1,100 odd kilograms, and they're hoping to trim some of the weight out of the car.
3 laps remaining, so time yet for Thompson.
Look at the enormous back wheels on the back of this Jag, 19-inch diameter and about 15 inches wide. That is a big, fast, and pretty potent sort of a motor car.
Well, they're coming down towards the lake corner again, and within the next half lap, they're going to run up on some of the slower traffic.
The news has come through that Brian Thompson passed whilst under the yellow flag, which could prove to be a problem for his official result this afternoon when the stewards get a chance to look at it. Fitzgerald comes through. He's ahead now of Mike Griffin. There's John Burke in the Celica as Trenouth tries what seems to be in vain to open up a gap over Brian Thompson.
Heading up Bitchafave again. They'll drop into the loop with a lot of these slower cars. Rodney Crick moving to the outside, waves through the leaders. Good work there on the part of the young rookie. And Trenouth now has Thompson closing on him rapidly as they come down towards Mazda corner. Another one of the drivers waving across to Trenouth, who will be under some sort of pressure, let me tell you. To the left-hander at Honda. Still slower cars in front. The power is now on as these two booming cars race down to the right-hander at the lake.
Coming up on slower traffic too as they hit the corner.
They can't do any passing through this area because of the flags out due to the wreck there. Trenouth goes through on the inside, and going through with him is Brian Thompson. Now Trenouth tries to get through with 1 lap to go, and Thompson had to think twice about that as they head up the hill. Last lap board out, as you could see. Only 1 moment there for Thompson to try and get through. Couldn't do it. Trenouth knows he's got about 3/4 of a lap, and Thompson is really closing on him as they come down to the back part of the course towards the Mazda corner. And the big Monza of Brian Thompson closing rapidly. Here he goes, down the outside. Won't do it from there. He's going to have to try and swing back through on the inside. And look at Fitzgerald up to join them. A three-way split for the checkered flag. Now they come up on a slower car. Trenoth goes the outside, and so following him through, Thompson then goes underneath him across the infield, spins it, and parks the machine in the last corner. Out behind the parked cars comes Mark Trenoth. The track is blocked. And going through to take the checkered flag now will be Mark Trenoth, who just gets there from Peter Fitzgerald. Third one still to come home. And you'll probably find in the run to the flag,
John Burke,
that 77 John Burke has picked up the third place. I tell you, it's a long way from Amaroo to Shepparton, and particularly if you go... Let's recap the placings, and sensational as they were. Mark Trenoth of Queensland and the Jaguar, the winner. Second place going to Peter Fitzgerald in the Porsche, and third place going to John Burke in the Celica. We'll take a break and return with more live motor racing action from Amaroo Park. Welcome back to Amaroo Park. Peter Davis's Capri now being righted. Well, it's at least back on four wheels after coming in contact with the racetrack there. Might take a look and see exactly what we captured as the cars came out of the corner. It was already on its way upside down and really powering its way back to us. Peter Davis, though, was able to walk away from that with some assistance from the marshals. But the car, unfortunately, well, the same can't be said for it. Then, of course, in the last quarter lap of the race, Brian Thompson chasing the race leader, Mark Trenoth, decides he's going to go for the slide job down the inside, but gets out on the rough. The Monza buries itself, slides across the grass. Trenoth goes through to continue his lead. Fitzgerald slips beneath it all, and the hand out the window tells it all. Brian Thompson waves goodbye to the rest of the cars. Well, the officials are still pulling that car out of the concrete wall. In the meantime, let's go to Gary Wilkinson.
Well, survival is certainly the name of the game. Mark Trenoth has done that, and Paul Fletcher from Camalco Wunderlich hands him the very well-deserved trophy and the sash for his victory in round 2 of the Camalco Wunderlich Sports Sedan Series here this afternoon, just getting to the line in front of Peter Fitzgerald, who's standing behind me puffing like an old grandpa and complaining that it was all hard work. It certainly was that. Mark, I think you must be pretty thankful that you're standing here holding the prize.
Yes, Gary, I was a bit lucky there. My tyres started going off towards the last 3 or 4 laps, and I just had to take it a bit easy and nurse them. Mind you, I did have a little bit in reserve if he came up.
A lot of people had a lot of things going off there in the last couple of laps.
Yes, it was a good race, a very enjoyable race once again.
It's very tough, and I think, well, I thought Brian Thompson was going to get you there for a minute, but yes. I think he must have come into contact with a slower car, did he?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I'll have to catch up with him after, but I'll have to give him a few driving lessons, I think.
Well, Fitz was right in behind there, so he might have had a view. What did you see, pal?
Yeah, well...
Can you talk? I mean, are you sure you're up to it?
I'm okay, I'm okay.
You want me to hold you up or something?
I'm all right. I was happy for them having their dice together. It allowed me to close up on them. I thought, well, if they can dice with each other, I might be able to slip under one of them. But as Tomo was coming up the inside, he accidentally clipped one of the slower cars that got in the way, and that put him off, and it was a case of trying to miss him from then on.
Well, he didn't, unfortunately. But I think the way it pans out now, first, second, third, is the same as the first round. Mark,
yes,
you were first,
right,
Peter, and John Burke third. Is that right?
Yes.
So, yeah. That's right. OK, well, that keeps the point standings in nice and clear-cut order. Congratulations, fellas. We're going to go back to Mike Raymond. All right, there they go. Well done in the second round of the Camalco Wunderlich.
Showing that a small car will never beat a big car. Then, of course, you've got to find the middle ground. You've got to find the track that brings them back together. Maybe Amaroo Park, as far as Colin Bond is concerned, could be just the circuit.
Well, we hope so. At this stage of the game, we're second on the grid. Obviously, the car is suited to the circuit better than it has been to some of the longer circuits we've been racing on just over the last few months. But the car likes the circuit. It's putting its power down very well. And I think it's going to be a fabulous race here today.
Tell me this, Colin, the amount of horsepower that you're giving away on the top end of the BMW, for starters, is the hill at Amaroo the hardest thing that you have to face?
I don't think so. I think basically getting through the corner onto the hill. Around here, I think, sure, it's nice to have the horsepower. I think you'll find some of the Commodores and that, which have got probably a lot more horsepower than what we have, can't get onto the straight as fast, and obviously only as quick as what we are up the straight. So I think it's very important to get the car onto the straight quickly. The BMW, which Jim Richards, of course, is always hard to beat anywhere, and I think it's going to be here again, you know. But I think that we may be able to wear them down, or we hope so. I think if Alan Jones was here, when there's a dynamite start like he's been doing lately in the little Alphas, then there'd be no problem at all.
The thing I was going to ask you, the difference basically between the two alphas that you're campaigning so far in the Touring Car Championship.
I'd say one's got a world champion in it. Yes. And the other one's only got an Australian. Has been a champion once, yes.
Well, no, you're putting yourself down.
I am a little bit, but honestly, the way Alan's driving at present, I don't think anyone in the world is going to drive as quick as him. I think he's going back to the Formula One and thinking about that. He's getting in the Alpha, thinks it's a Formula One car, and drives the living daylights out of it. And it's amazing how the car's actually been standing up, you know. We're surprised, he's surprised, and the times he's been doing in the car and the method of driving has just been unbelievable.
Well, that's great. You're the head booster for the Alan Jones fan club, but if we took Alan Jones out of that car and put Colin Bond in that car and put Alan Jones in your car, would that make any difference?
I don't think so, Mike. Both cars are as close as we could possibly get. You never have two cars the same, obviously. He sits on the left-hand side and I sit on the right-hand side, so sometimes I think the circuit favours one to the other. I think around here, for argument's sake, it might favour my car because you've got the extra bit of weight on the inside of the corners. But then again, on some of the other circuits with Bathurst, it may be better sitting on the left-hand side of the car. And I think that, you know, he just likes it. It's got very quick and direct steering in his car, which we haven't. We're a bit more like luxury power steering. We haven't got power steering, but it's got a lot more turns lock to lock and it's a lot lighter. So it's easier for the older people to drive these cars.
You're very modest. Colin Bond, who I think has given Alan Jones a big rap, but not a big rap on himself, and he certainly deserves that. We'll take a break and then come back with more motor racing action from Amaroo Park. Back here at Amaroo Park Raceway, the cars coming out onto the racetrack for the Better Brakes AMSCAR Touring Car Series. Heat 3 here today, round 1. The distance of this afternoon's third heat is, of course, 20 laps. And just waiting on Jim Richards in car number 62, the JPS BMW, to come out. 52 going through. Kenny Matthews in the new car that has been built for him, the new Group A Commodore by Terry Finnegan. There's some late work just been carried out there on the BMW. Nothing to worry about. And the pole man will come out onto the racetrack. Let's have a look how they'll line up for the 20 lapper this afternoon. From pole position in car number 62 is Jim Richards in the JPS BMW. From 226, Colin Bond in the Network Alpha. From 3 is car number 21, Robbie Francevic of New Zealand in the Mark Petch Volvo. From 4-2, Steve Masterton, the Commodore. From 5, car number 23, Tony Longhurst of Queensland in the BMW. From 6, car 12, Gary Wilmington in the Jaguar XJS. From 7, car 33, Barry Seaton in the Mustang. From 8, car number 22, Glenn Malloy in the BMW. From 9 is 19, Kenny Matthews in the Commodore. From 10, car number 69 is Phil McDonnell in the Alfa Romeo. From 11, car 13, reliable Bob Holden in the Toyota Sprinter. And from 12, car number 53 is Chris Heyer. And of course, filling out the field from 1370, Ray Spence in a Mazda. From position 1475, Laurie Hazelton in a Capri. And from 15, car number 65, John Kraft, also in a Capri. And Neil Crompton to update us with the points, how they're running now after 2 heats today.
After the first 2 heats, Mike, the leader, quite understandably, Jim Richards with a total of 50 points. Robbie Francevic is in second placing with 46, and then sharing third placing, we've got Steve Masterton and Tony Longhurst.
Here's Steve Masterton on screen now, carrying race cam. We'll be crossing to that during the course of the 20 lapper today. A very interesting guy is, in fact, Steve Masterton. Some details about the career of the Moorebank Flyer. Has been in racing for 10 years, debuting his Group A Commodore here today. Has won quite consistently here at Amaroo Park, a former Rookie of the Year in the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst, and a regular Mr. Nice Guy. Colin Bond and Jim Richards share the front row. You might remember the earlier heat today where Bond took off in a shell, but unfortunately by the time they got to the top of the hill, Bondy had gone back about 4 or 5 spots.
Yeah, lost a gear there, Mike, and really never recovered that position. That's the view that you'll be seeing from time to time throughout the race. Well, Steve Masterton hopes that won't be the view. He hopes it'll be clear track in front of him.
10 seconds away from the start of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Touring Car Series at Amaroo Park, the 20-lap final. And they get away to a good start, and Bond gets away now. If he can change gears, Masterton with a blinder separates the two of them as they head up Bitchapate Hill for the first time. Robbie Francevic there in 21 also splitting them. Jim Richards dropping back. He's back in about 4th spot. And Gary Wilmington in the XJS Jag comes up to 2nd and may make that 3rd as Bond goes through on the inside. Got off the freight track.
Francevic is the next one through, and Jimmy Richards, who's been away so smartly in all of the races, is back in about 4th spot.
Once again, Wilmington, who's made such a good start, has lost out because he was caught wide going into the loop and allowed 3 or 4 cars to get back underneath him again. All the ground that he made up going up the hill the first time has been lost.
Jim Richards has a power of driving to do now because he's back in 4th, tailing Steve Masterton, Colin Bond, Robbie Francevic as they head down to the lake corner. And here's Masterton in the Masterton Homes 2WS Commodore. Comes along the short straight to Camalco corner. Bondi making a good start. Francevic is there. And what a good showing from Wilmington too as they go beneath our speed camera across the strike and head up Bitchapave Hill again.
Wilmington in 5th place ahead of Longhurst, who showed out to such advantage in the first 2 heats of the series here today, but not so this time in the 20-lapper. This is the long one. Masterton we saw lead up early in the 2nd heat and then get run down by Jim Richards. Will that be the case this time? Remember, they've got 20 laps to go.
He's been coming out of the gate very quickly, Gary. Masterton bowling away, Colin Bond in hot pursuit, and the tail of the Commodore really hanging out on that occasion.
He's pushing it hard. I think he knows he's got to push it pretty hard, though, to establish some... Oh, look at the battle here between Francevic and Jimmy Richards. Old adversaries through several rounds now of the Australian Touring Car Championship.
Well, Francevic going in tight behind Richards. Richards coming up to 3rd place now. Bond just ahead of him on the track, and Masterton with a good head over the field, heads up Bitchapave Hill again. So the dice is now 3rd, chasing 2nd as Jim Richards, current leader in the Australian Touring Car Championship Series, heads into Dunlop Loop. There's Bond. Car number 26 really throwing the Network Alpha, the Ignis Fridges entry, through the turn and now onto the back straight.
This little car of Bondi's really has found something here at Amaroo this weekend. He's been campaigning midfield through most of the rounds of the Touring Car Championship so far without doing anything outstanding, but he's right up there mixing it with the front runners today.
Good. I can't wait for the Australian Touring Car Championship round here at Amaroo Park and see Alan Jones here in the 2nd of the Alphas. Here's Richards coming down under brakes, thought about it. Now he goes to the outside. Hope he's going to try and get Bond on the exit off the turn, but Bond covers that nicely, gets off the wall.
Notice all the drivers skirting around the outside of the fuel and oil that's been spilt down there.
It's been a day for Rex. Okay, Richards now lining up for the matching of horsepower. And there you can see the difference as they go over the top of the skyline and dropping down into Dunlop Loop. Richards from 4th to 3rd, past Francevic, now past Bond. He moves to 2nd, and Steve Masterton in the Masterton Homes 2WS Group A Commodore still leads as they come down to Mazda corner.
Bond not giving up on Richards, though, clinging to his tail through the back of the course, coming down towards Honda again. Masterton leads Richards and Bond.
The big hassle for Steve Masterton, as you can see with the tail hanging out once again, is there's 190 kilograms of lead in the back, where the back seat would be of the Group A Commodore, and that's heating up the tyres more and more all the time. In fact, the total weight of the car is about 1,410 kilograms, which is about 200 more than it really needs to be in this type of car to conform with the regulations.
Richards is going to get Masterton in the next lap or two. Bond goes through, still holding down 3rd place ahead of Francevic, and then quite a gap from the 4th placed Francevic to Gary Wilmington in the big red Jag.
They're running about a 2nd off Jim Richards' qualifying pace, which was 55.2, and now Richards hard into the tail of Steve Masterton as they go through the loop, and again the Commodore really sliding. Richards' car looking smooth, sitting flat on the road, gets a little fresh air, has a look, fills up the mirrors of Masterton.
And while this is happening, Bond manages to get back on the freight train again, coming down to Honda corner. Masterton really has his hands full with the Commodore at this stage. Richards will look for an inside run down here under brakes. Bond is there, very alert to try and pick up the pieces. And as they come out along the short straight to Wunderlich corner, it's still Steve Masterton. Not a bad debut, though, particularly when you consider how Jim Richards has been dominating the Touring Car Championship.
Oh, this is an outstanding first-up showing for Masterton's Commodore. I think they're going to be tickled pink with the results that they've produced here today. Win, lose or draw in this 3rd and final heat of today's round.
You don't think Jim's putting some pressure on him too? Just getting him to skate out a bit wider. This leave the opening there. Oh, the tail of the car right across the front of the BMW.
Here comes Jim, Richards again.
Yeah, Jim will want to get out of here pretty quickly, I'd say. Wait for the pass as Richards puts the pressure on, and he goes through on the inside. So Jimmy Richards has gone through to take over the lead wait for Colin Bond to see if he can put the same pressure on as they come out of the bend. The Masterton has been able to lead. Watch for Bond on the inside coming up now.
Well, you can hear it, but you can't see it yet. The distinctive sound of the...
There it is.
There it is. 2.5 litre V6 Alpha, but Masterton comes back, puts power to the ground a little bit quicker, and almost snatches back second place. In fact, he does.
Yeah, Bond was just a little slow to react coming out of the corner, got the car just a little bit sideways. And look at Francevic moving up.
As Dick Johnson would say, the Swedish Valiant is on the move, heading up the hill, and Francevic, maybe they put the fourth gear in it for the 20 lapper this afternoon. He's found some, he's come across, now caught in. This is some great Group A racing.
Well, the gearbox that's in the Volvo was found on a farm north of Newcastle by Graham Watson, apparently, and the ratios are totally wrong for Amaroo Park, but it's better than the one they had from Perth.
Well, they come down towards the back part of the course again. Francevic, Masterton still wagging the tail of the Masterton Holmes car, but still doing a great job. Bond there in 26, really keeping the pressure on. Now switches to the inside as they run down to the lake. Once again, we take race cam. Look for Bond on the inside, and don't be surprised if Francevic doesn't come into it as well. There goes Bond. Francevic is hollering around there somewhere on the inside as they come up to take the right-hander. And here's Robbie Francevic with Steve Masterton as they come out of Wunderlich corner, come back across the strike. Richards the race leader, Bond in second, Masterton is third, and Francevic is fourth.
Quite a gap then back to the fifth place getter. That's still Gary Wilmington in the XJS Jag ahead of Tony Longhurst in the BMW. Great dice, in fact, going on between that pair. You couldn't get a bigger contrast in the types of car. Wilmington's Jaguar and the BMW 323 of Tony Longhurst really battling it out in fifth spot, not far astern of the leading quartet at this stage.
German BMW, Italian Alfa, Australian Holden, and Swedish Valiant come Volvo, as Dick would say, in fourth position. And that's exactly what Group A is all about. And look here, as Robbie Francevic closes once again under brakes onto the back of the Holden Commodore being driven by Steve Masterton. Said yesterday that he'd be really happy if he could pick up a third or a fourth. They would consider that to be a good opening outing for the car. And they're doing marvellous things. Bond, Masterton, Francevic in the Mark Petch-owned Volvo 240. The turbo just finding its legs over the top of the hill, but not getting close enough.
Check the placings at this stage of the race. You'll find that Jim Richards is still the leader in the JPS BMW, followed by Colin Bond, the Alfa Romeo. Third spot being held by Steve Masterton as we take a break in this round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series. Back at Amaroo Park, and this, as they say, is where the action is. There's Steve Masterton, and the swap places, he and the Volvo of Robbie Francevic. And there was nothing gentle about it either. There was a bit of push and shove involved in it. 11 laps gone in this race, 20 lapper. Jim Richards continues to lead. Let's have another look at this. Francevic has just got by. Masterton says, I don't like that, buddy. Make way.
Tinkle, tinkle. The glass out of the front of the Commodore, and Francevic heads for the hills. I don't blame him. So Robbie Francevic has made it up now to third place. Jim Richards is still our race leader. Colin Bond still running second on the road, and Robbie Francevic is third. Steve Masterton is fourth as we take race cam coming down to the left-hander at Honda.
Mechanically might be quite sound at its first outing, the Commodore, but by gee, he's got some handling to sort out, hasn't he?
Yes, well, as we said before, Gary, the car extremely heavy, just over 1,400 kilograms at the moment. And of course, after August, they'll be pulling some weight out of the car, about 75 kgs, which means it still will carry ballast. But there's a lot of experimentation at the moment with rubber on the Commodores, and I'm sure that Masterton and his professional crew will get it together. But engine and gearbox and brakes are all working fine on this car at the moment.
He's in fourth place on the track at the present time. Tony Longhurst in the BMW is in fifth place, and then comes Gary Wilmington in the big XJS Jag, and at the present time he's under a little pressure himself from car 22, and that's Glenn Malloy in yet another of the BMWs. And then Ken Matthews, yeah.
So some new cars on the circuit for the first time, well, for this season, with Glenn Malloy in the BMW, the car that was campaigned last year by Jim Richards. The man trying to get past him is Sydney car dealer Kenny Matthews in the Commodore that was built for him by Terry Finnegan. So some interesting new equipment on the racetrack today, and good to see Gary Wilmington still out there, and powering along in the XJS.
It's interesting, Mike, since I did that interview with him just a little earlier this afternoon about the lack of sponsorship, suddenly Monia roof tiles have come to the party, and they've put their insignia on the side of his car just to see what it's like to get their feet in the water of motor racing. They'll get a good run for their money, I think, with Gary Wilmington. He's a top campaigner.
It's good to see he's got something concrete.
Oh.
Gary Wilmington comes through the bottom corner and onto the straight, and he is either waving to his crew or waving, I can't believe, Ken Matthews through. Keeping in mind the car overheated at Sandown at its last Touring Car Championship start, and I'd say, yes, that's not necessarily as it overheated, but he has a problem with the car. So bad luck there for the battler from Sydney.
Well, he's running on a borrowed gearbox. He's got one coming from England. Hopefully will be here this week and installed and ready to run in the next round of the Australian Touring Car Championship, which of course you'll see on the 7 network from Adelaide. And that's where he believes this car will be suited by the long stretches of the Adelaide circuit.
Glenn Malloy doing a pretty good job here in the ex-Richards BMW. Has done a little bit of racing here in Amaroo when he ran the Triumph TR7. Had a couple of years layoff, but he's finding his footing pretty quickly out here at the moment. The car, of course, extremely well set up in the hands of Jim Richards last year in Group C trim, as Gary mentioned. BMW quite naturally fits into the Group A slot very nicely. This is a beautifully turned out motor car, the 2.3 litre 6-cylinder 323 BMW, being driven by Tony Longhurst from Queensland, the man who ran so well here at Amaroo, of course in the Alpha Sud, done some great things up in Queensland in the Gemini Series there, had a run last year at the World Endurance Championship at Sandown with Jimmy Richards in the BMW. This car, one of the prettiest little motor cars on the circuit at the moment. Lovingly built up by Frank Gardner and all the JPS crew. Done a lot of work on this car and made it very competitive. I said before, they're hoping to install the 2.5 litre engine in this a little bit later in the season. I think that it's fair to say that Tony is going to be capable of giving people like Colin Bond a fair run for their money in the Touring Car Championship and Endurance Championship. So I guess it's been built to help break up things in that class a little.
At the moment, Tony Longhurst running 5th on the racetrack, but closing just a little bit on Steve Masterton in the number 2 Masterton Holmes car.
Pretty busy boy, Tony Longhurst. Among other things, he's the owner of a fairy floss stand at Dreamworld in Queensland, builds the odd house here and there, and has a pool cleaning contract operations. Pretty strange combination to go motor racing with.
Sticky business. We're for car number 23. And he is doing exceptionally well, Tony Longhurst. Another fellow who's going well at the front of the pack is Jimmy Richards in car number 62, who I think would have started, without doubt, odds-on favourite to win here today, despite the fact that it was the debut of the Commodore by Steve Masterton. But there he goes, 62, Frank Gardner, expressionless.
With Gary Walden in the background.
So they're having a great season, keeping in mind that they've been following a lot of other teams around for a few years, and they're now starting to enjoy a little of the success that they've deserved. Colin Bond, not that far back behind Jim Richards in car number 26 as Richards comes across the line again with the laps running out. Bond in second, checking the gap back to Bond.
3 laps remaining in the race, and a good leader, Jim Richards from Colin Bond, and what a great job Bondi's done in the little Alpha.
0.2 of a second, the gap between Richards and Colin Bond.
Yeah, that gap's starting to close now, Mike.
Well, whether or not Jim has cooled it, here's a problem for Gary Wilmington. They're changing rubber.
It's a bit hard to try and come into the pits and do some work when they've got cars lined up in there for the next race, isn't it?
You're not wrong.
Looks like it may have been flat.
Yeah, some power tools would also assist. But then again, when you're on a tight budget, you probably can't afford those luxuries.
Colin Bond coming down towards the lake corner and about 40 metres astern of the race leader, Jim Richards. Just not close enough to apply pressure, but I must admit he does have a 50-metre lead over the 3rd place getter, and that's Robbie Francevic in the hard-charging Volvo.
I think we can expect to see better things from the Volvo in the next round of the Touring Car Championship with those long straights at Adelaide.
And a fully competitive gearbox would help as well.
Yes, I think he's been the find on. Oh, hold on. He thought he was back doing the Bega Rally or something. Yeah.
Thought he was at the rally sprint a few weeks ago.
No, I think he might have run out of tyres.
Well, he's still been able to hold that about that same gap, 3/10 of a second back behind Jim Richards. If Richards would be doing anything else but just taking it easy.
Some experience between these two drivers. Colin Bond, twice Australian Rally champion, winner of the James Hardy 1000 back in '69 in a Holden Monaro. Australian Touring Car champion, of course, and Jim Richards, winner at Bathurst with Brock, and looking down the gun barrel this year of his first major Australian championship. But funny enough, both of these fellows have won their major races, their major titles in General Motors products.
Whatever the problem was with Wilmington's Jag, they're back on the track and running, but it's all going to be a little too late because the last lap board is out. It's been taken by Jim Richards and by Colin Bond. Francevic holding down third spot, then Masterton as the final lap unwinds for Jimmy Richards. 3 heats in this first round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series at Amaroo Park for 1985, and it's 3 wins coming up for Jim Richards and the clear series leader after round 1. Well deserved, and the form man of touring car racing in Australia so far in 1985, not just here at Amaroo. I say what, Bond's closing up.
Yes, he's
in the last stages here. I don't know whether it's just a desperation move on his part or whether Jim Richards is content to cruise to the line.
And coming up to take the checkered flag, Jimmy Richards goes on to win the Better Brakes Group A Series at Amaroo Park. Second place will go to Colin Bond. The likeable Kiwi Robbie Francevic will get third place out of it. And salvaging fourth will be Steve Masterton in the Masterton Homes Group A Commodore. So let's recap the official placings for you. As recorded, 62, Jimmy Richards first. Second place, going to 26, Colin Bond in the Alfa Romeo. And third place, 21, Robbie Francevic of New Zealand in the Turbo Volvo. In the meantime, we'll take a break and then return for more action from Sydney's Amaroo Park.
Can't do better than keep on winning, and that's been the formula for Jim Richards in 1985, and here today in the first round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series. Norm Reinhardt from Better Brakes to hand over the trophy to Jim Richards for a pretty big effort here this afternoon. Jim, I think that you'd be pretty pleased with the way things went.
No, very good. Yeah, no, the car finished perfect today. Was really good, did everything right.
The concept, of course, we've seen in operation here at Amaroo Park in this type of series previously, with 3 heats on the day over the 3 different distances. It really does test you out, doesn't it?
Well, you've got to keep sort of working at it and get a good total, that's for sure, because it won't be, won't be quite as easy in the future. I can see that.
I haven't seen the bottle of champagne, but Norm's got the glasses there for you, and I'm sure he'd like you to accept those if you can get your sash in place. A very big effort.
Yes, thank you, Jim. You've led all the way in Group A this year, and today you've came to Amaroo and taken out the first round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series. So I expect that in all future rounds we're going to see a lot of Jim Richards up in front once again. Jim, on behalf of the Better Brakes Auto Service Centres, congratulations on today's win.
Thank you very much to Norm Reinhardt. Congratulations again to Jimmy Richards, also to Colin Bond, who I think finishes second in points on today's 3 heats, and also to Robbie Francevic. What's the matter, pal?
It's hard work out there chasing Jim, I can assure you.
Is that right? You were getting all over the place like the proverbial mad woman's breakfast.
I know. I think we'll have to bring our big gun down from Queensland to actually punt this thing around, because I'm sure that when Alan comes down here to drive the car, it's going to be very exciting for the crowd and for everybody in particular.
Yeah, it's going to be
fantastic.
And the drivers. Yeah, that's right. That's right. OK, right now we're going to take you for some more information on upcoming events to Neil Crompton.
Some of the most exciting racing we've seen so far in season 1985 has come from the Ford Lasers. The new Goodyear Car Owners Club Series has provided some panel crunching stuff. One of the hot contenders in the class is Ken Douglas here from Victoria, and Ken, it really has been quite magnificent.
Yeah, it has been. The racing's extremely close. I think the first 27 cars are covered by 2 seconds lean lap time, so it's extremely close.
Now tell us a little bit about the car. As I understand it, 1.5 litre, front wheel drive, suspension modification, a different wheel and tyre combination, but everything else is standard?
Yes, that's right. They supply a suspension kit and certain wheels and tyres, and there's no options. available. So, yeah, basically standard.
And what does it cost to field one of these cars?
Well, there's the purchase price of the car, and then you need to do some mechanical preparation. Basically, about $1,500 to $2,000 over the purchase price of the car.
Which puts it at what, around about $12,000, $13,000, something like that?
Well, a car like my own, which is an early model, about $9,000 all up.
It's very cheap motor racing.
Compared to some of the other categories, and there's a lot of exposure and very close racing.
Now, very cheap motor racing, particularly when you consider that there's $7,000 for each of the rounds and $15,000 for the overall series, not to mention another $2,000 for the most promising driver. That's very, very good reward for pretty hard work.
It's certainly worth chasing. It's extremely good money.
Have you had a lot of other racing experience?
I've raced in Victoria for a few years in the State Series, but at open meetings, no.
Having a look this morning at that first heat over the top loop, there was some incredible stuff happening. What did you see? What happened from your viewpoint?
Well, I had a few cars that kept tapping me in the back bumper bar, and I noticed one car rolled off the inside. I didn't see what happened there.
Do you have to budget for that kind of thing? It's obviously going to be part of the sport.
Oh, it's very hard to put a price on it. If you roll the car, well, obviously you lost the whole thing, but yeah, you make an allowance for it and just hope for the best.
When you've got a situation like this where the cars are so evenly matched and there's not much you can really do mechanically, are there any other areas that you can make gains?
Well, the tyres is one area. The tyres are, of course, buffed down in order to get them to their proper working height. And there's a lot of experimentation as to the correct angle for buffing them, whether it's radiused or flat or at an angle or whatever. So, yeah, there, and just basic tuning of the engine.
And what does that do when you buff the tyre? More grip?
Yes, it does, because a road tyre has a lot of tread depth in it for wet weather use to dissipate all the water. And of course that's no good for dry weather racing. The tread just squirms and you lose lap times.
Well, certainly providing some great action for us here today at Amaroo, and wish you the very best of luck. So that's some of the details about the exciting Ford Laser Series for 1985. Now here's Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Neil. As the cars come out now for the Goodyear Car Owners Club Ford Laser Series, always provides us with plenty of interesting action over the distance, of course, of 8 laps this afternoon. It'll take our telecast out, and it might be just the time to have a look at how they will line up the top 12 on the grid this afternoon for this 8-lap event. Pole position, car number 3 is Mark Scaife. From position 2, car number 41 is Peter Dane. From 3 is car number 5, Ken Douglas. From 4 is Mark Gibbs. From position number 5 is Steve Williams. Let's take row number 3, combination of Brabham and Rose. Then from row number 4, we have Rose and Mork. From 5, Robertson and Dawson. From 6, Jones and Bernie Hanley. And that is only half of it, because we have then another 15 cars to start in the Goodyear Car Owners Club Laser Series. And just waiting on the field to form up at the moment.
Apparently, Mike, they've issued something like 70-odd new logbooks for Ford Lasers in the country, so the class is kicking on quite nicely and giving many young up-and-coming drivers the opportunity to get onto major Australian racing circuits and, of course, get a little bit of exposure on television and so on, and sharpen up their racecraft.
I heard that you were buying one.
In the process of, Gary, toying with the idea, just trying to figure out at the moment what kind of a budget a fella's going to need, because by the look of some of the action,
2 lasers.
You have to budget for an extra laser just to make it to the end of the day.
Well, we have, of course, the Goodyear Car Owners Club Series has also been supported by Cheviot Wheels, and of course Valvoline, another one of the very strong supporters of motorsport and of the Goodyear Laser Series. So they've got a lot of sponsorship involved with this series for 1985 here at Amaroo Park.
Very quickly, Mike, before the field gets underway, a quick look at the points in the situation after the Better Break Series. Jim Richards leads with 75, Robbie Francevic with 69, and then 3 drivers sharing 3rd place, Masterton, Longhurst and Bond. Just thought we'd squeeze that in before we leave you.
Thank you, Neil. We're ready to go racing now with the round of the Goodyear Car Owners Club Ford Laser Series. And the flag is up. And away they go with Mark Scaife getting away quickly. Car number 3 gets away from the inside. Going with him, though, is Dane. He sneaks through there to take over the lead as they head up the hill. There's young Brabham getting away smartly as well. Up there in about 5th or 6th spot, but he's been engulfed by a wall of cars as they go to the top of Skyline and now drop down into Dunlop Loop for the first time. Just look at the traffic and the lines they're trying to to get into the Dunlop loop, but they've all managed to get through there without any problem whatsoever. And they head on now for the run down to Mazda Corner, where we'll find the Dane is in front, Gibbs in second, and Scaife into third.
Oh, gee, it'd be disheartening to be last man off the grid, wouldn't it?
An awful lot of cars in front and not a lot of horsepower to play with.
Graham Blanche, I think it was, in car 19 at the rear of the field as they went down through Dunlop the first time. What a task he's got to get into contention for this race.
There's 21, little sideways there, caught it back under control
He
again.
won't turn 22.
That was Bernie Hanley, and he's sharper in that division. 25, Lawrence Handley. Also skating off the racetrack as the field comes through Wunderlich Corner for the completion of 1 lap and 5 remaining in the Goodyear Car Owners Club Lacer Series. Heading up the hill, and there's the sun that always does present drivers with a problem here late in the day as they go to the top of Skyline. The sun in their eyes, but Dane at this stage nicely clear as he drops down in the corner. Douglas making a good move, is now was up to third as they came into the corner. Doesn't look like he's going to come out running third as they come down to Mazda.
Gibbs in behind, then Scaife. Dane, the man that we're looking at there in car number 41, currently lies third in the series after 2 rounds with 14 points. The leader at the moment, Ken Douglas, with 18. Mark Scaife with 14, sharing that with Peter Dane. There's young David Brabham in there as well. And those Goodyear NCTs taking a real punishing at the moment through Honda Corner.
I like the way some of them are using the grass and just about everything else to all of the racetrack, and then some more, as they come along the short straight to Wunderlich Corner, and Dane has this one in his control at the moment.
Ken Douglas ahead of Mel Rose, ahead of David Brabham,
who, without being spectacular, is acquitting himself pretty well.
He's certainly doing that. Again, up Bitchapave Hill, the long haul up there in the lasers. And traffic congestion still at a premium in the turns. Up at the front of the field, though, Dane has the pressure off him just a little bit to use the centre track line, comes out the inside and heads down to Mazda Corner. And there is the gap. Oh, there's someone leaving the scene of an incident, or maybe an accident. Off the track up in the top bend, and we'll just pan back to see who it was. 30, I think it was, that was involved in that.
Adrian Engelin.
May well have. So 41, Peter Dane still leads from car number 13, Mark Gibbs. Then back, of course, to Mark Scaife in car number 3. 5 is the next one through, Kenny Douglas of Victoria.
Douglas, the man that did so well to survive in an earlier race on the program.
Richard Mork there in car number 9 doing a kamikaze as he came into Winfield, and somebody else getting terrifyingly out of shape onto the main straight. Car number 11 that was, and that was Steve Williams. Of course, Williams was the fellow who very neatly backed himself into Jim Zerafos this morning and destroyed the car.
And, of course, won the last round here at Amaroo.
Well, he's not in a winning position today as the cars string through again, and Peter Dane continuing to lead quite comfortably from Mark Gibbs.
So a little bit more pressure being put on the leader here at the moment. Melrose, David Brabham. There's Steve Williams in the brightly coloured car. Interesting to look at some of the lines. Some of them missing the apex, some of them right up over the top of the ripple strip. The leader at the moment in a pretty reasonable position, still with around about 3 car lengths, and Peter Dane in car 41 doing a very neat job of it as he comes back across the start-finish line at Amaroo Park. Gibbs, Scaife from the Central Coast, and there's 4 laps to go. So exactly half race distance. And for the first time, I think, in the series, there's actually some gaps between the leading half-dozen cars. Out of the loop. Ken Douglas, the fellow who is not having the best of runs in this one, and this will enable Peter Dane to close that 4-point gap. He currently lies with 14 points in the series, chasing Douglas with 18. There's Douglas, car number 5. Melrose, still David Brabham. Steve Williams, somebody actually oversteering, which is pretty hard to do in one of these lasers.
77 takes a shortcut on the grass again. Gary Jones. That's the man there in the blue car coming through. Doesn't mind a shortcut. But still Dane from Gibbs.
They've got 3 laps to go, so they've completed 5.
Starting to spread themselves out, despite the fact it's an 8-lap event. We pick up car number 3, Mark Scaife, going through Dunlop and heading down the back part of the course. 13 still, Mark Gibbs hanging in there, in company with Peter Dane in car number 41. And compared to some of the other motorsporting events on the national calendar, the Goodyear Car Owners Club Laser Series certainly pays very well indeed, Neil.
Very big money, Mike. In fact, there's $15,000 in overall prize money for the series, and they're splitting up some $7,000 for each of the rounds, and there's another $2,000 for the most promising up-and-coming driver in the series. And when you look at that, for money invested and potential money earned at the end of the series, if you can perform all right...
Yeah, why would you go to touring cars?
That's right. Well, not to mention Formula One.
It's a good stepping stone, though, and it's brought some new faces into motorsport. That's great. They might branch out into other areas such as Formula 2 and Formula 1 and the touring cars.
I figure if you could own or get an invitational drive in one of these ET turbos and own yourself a laser, you could probably become the highest paid racing driver in Australian motorsport at the moment.
You're not wrong. Here comes our race leader down the back part of the course towards Mazda Corner. Peter Dane, looking at a good payout here this afternoon. A good scrap still going on for second place, though, as they come to Honda Corner.
The other good thing about this series is that there's not only the Goodyear Car Owners Club Series, but also the Motorcraft Series in each of the states. And so if you wanted to traipse up and down the coast, you could probably run one of these about every 2 weeks quite comfortably through into the end of the year. That's if you could afford it.
Last lap board is about to go out for this little chapter.
Once again, out of Wonderlick Corner, and Dane still leading comfortably.
Gibbs under pressure from Scaife now, though, for second spot. They go up the hill one more time. Scaife pulls out, makes a move.
Yes, look for this. The scrap for second. It's on.
Scaife is caught out wide, unfortunately for him, and Gibbs holds on to second spot for the moment.
But he may have found the inside line as they come out of the corner.
Got it.
And that was very well done. Very well done. Sensible bit of driving and a bit of maturity being shown by the young fellow who was a bit over-exuberant in the first round here. But Mark Scaife snuck through. I think there may have just been a teensy little tap there at the end of that manoeuvre.
So car 41, Peter Dane, comes out heading down to the late corner. Mark Scaife in car number 3. A very strong finish for Scaife. But in the short straightaway run to the checkered flag, it's going to be Dane who comes out and is going to go on and win. So the Goodyear Car Owners Club Laser Series round 2, in fact, goes to Dane.
And that completes our telecast today from Amaroo Park. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you can join us again when next we go motor racing on the 7 Network. And that will be round 5, the Australian Touring Car Championship from Adelaide on April 21. On behalf of Neil Crompton and Mike Raymond, I'm Gary Wilkinson. Don't forget, join us again next time.